بسم الله والابن والروح القدس الإله الواحد آمين. تحل علينا نعمته وبركته من الآن وإلى أبد الآباد كلها آمين. We thank you all for coming today and for your time. It's truly a precious time. And we also have a precious thing to care about is our children. Our children is the most important thing that we can care and that we can together, the church and you as families can put them in the hand of our Lord Jesus Christ. الحقيقة موضوع اللي عايز أتكلم فيه معاكم النهاردة هو موضوع الحفظ. إزاي ولادنا يبقوا محفوظين. Today the topic I want to speak about is how our children can be kept. And one of the greatest chapters in the Bible, 4 chapters in the Gospel of St. John, 14, 15, 16, and 17. It is as if it's a conclusion of all the service of our Lord Jesus Christ. الإصحاحات 14 و15 و16 و17 في إنجيل يوحنا إصحاحات مهمة جدا، لأن المسيح بيستودع الكنيسة سر عمله الخلاصي. He entrusts the church with his act of salvation. This is very important to understand. This is very important to read. So please, when you go home today, you have a homework. Read the 4 chapters of the Gospel of John, 14, 15, 16, and 17. Very important 4 chapters. لما تروحوا البيت عليك واجب تعملوه. صح 14, 15, 16, 17. And the most important gift that our Lord Jesus Christ gave to keep us is what? The Holy Spirit. Is the Holy Spirit. He said, I will not leave you orphans. I will give you my Holy Spirit to dwell in you and dwell in you. He will come upon you and dwell in you. قال كده المسيح هديكم الروح القدس لا أترككم يتامى بل أرسل لكم المعزي روح الحق. يعمل يسكن فيكم ويدوم فيكم. Not just come upon you but dwell in you. عشان كده بولس الرسول يقول أنتم هياكل الله وروح الله يسكن فيكم. You are the altars of God and the Holy Spirit dwells in you. Dwells mean you are his house. I will say a negative story. Sorry, I don't like negative stories, but it is very important to understand how the Holy Spirit dwells in us and he doesn't leave us until the end of our life. But some people accept the work of the Holy Spirit and make the Holy Spirit fiery inside them. ناس بتاخد الروح القدس تخليه يشتعل جواهم، وللأسف في ناس تانية تهمل عمل الروح القدس فيهم. كان في واحد، أنا هقولها بالعربي بعدين أقولها تاني بالإنجليش. كان في واحد الراجل ده كان شغال ساحر، فلأنه بيستخدم السحر فكان دايما يشتغل مع الشياطين، فكان يروح كتير قوي المقابر. فراح لواحد صاحبه بيشتغل معاه مسيحي، قال له انتوا عندكم حاجة اسمها ميرون؟ فالراجل استغرب قوي المسيحي، هو عرف منين الميرون ده؟ قال له انت عرفت الميرون منين؟ قال له الحقيقة أنا بشتغل بالسحر وبروح المقابر، وكنت في المقابر وكانوا دفنين واحد مسيحي، وبعد الدفنة وبالليل خالص، طبعا هو بيروح المدافن بالليل ما بيروحش الصبح، بيروح بالليل والدنيا في الليل، قال فوجئت إن في موكب عظيم وملكة عظيمة، والملكة دي قالت للخدام بتوعها إيه؟ تعالوا نلم ميرون ابني، الشخص ده خسارة فيه الميرون. طبعا كلام صعب قوي، بس سامحوني يعني أنا لازم أقوله. فبيقولوا طلعوا كأنها الجثمان يعني من القبر، وحطوه في زي بيزن كده فيه مية، فابتدى يعوم على وش المية زيت. فجت الملكة العظيمة دي وراحت مجمعة الزيت بمعلقة كده وخدته في إزازة، وطلع الموكب فوق للسماء ورجعوا الجسد زي ما هو، والمية كبوها حوالين الإيه؟ حوالين القبر. The story يعني it's a little bit negative story, but I want to tell it to show you how important is the gift we have. And not only we have this gift, our children have this gift also. The gift of the protection, of the covering of the Holy Spirit. That a person who was a sorcerer, he used to go to the cemeteries very late at night, and then there was a funeral and they buried the person. He was Christian. And at midnight, there was like a great group of congregation, and a very, very honored woman came and said, we have to take the Mayroon of my son. He didn't keep the Mayroon of my son. So they brought out the body, they put it in a basin of water, and she began to collect the oil from the water, and then they buried him and they sprinkled the water all over the tomb again. Who is this great woman? Saint Mary. العذراء جت بنفسها ايه؟ تجمع الميرون. ليه؟ لأن هذا الشخص. أنا الهدف من القصة مش إن أنا أخوفكم. I'm not saying this story to make you afraid or something. No, the main point of the story is the Holy Spirit does not abandon us. The Holy Spirit does not leave us. We have to teach our children this. This is very important to notice in the church and outside the church. مهم قوي ان احنا نعرف ولادنا كده ان انت ايه؟ You are protected. There is a very important psalm. You have to pray it every day, and you have to teach your children to pray it every day. Psalm 15 in the first prayer. Keep me, O Lord, because I have hoped in you. مزمور 15 في صلاة باكر. احفظني يا رب فإني عليك توكلت. صلوه كل يوم، علموه لأولادكم. المزمور بيقول جعلت الرب أمامي في كل حين لأنه عن يميني لكي لا أتزعزع. I put the Lord in front of me. Always that he is on my right hand side, I'm not troubled. لأنه عن يميني لكي لا أتزعزع. علموه للولاد. خلوا الولاد يحسوا إن المسيح إيه؟ عن يمينك. When you are in the class, Jesus Christ is at your right hand. This will help him a lot to overcome the fights against him, to overcome the temptation, to feel he is secure, to feel he is not alone. Sometimes the children, they feel alone. يعني imagine one child in a class and they all have the same يعني mindset. تخيلوا طفل كده ولا ولد وقاعد في فصل وكل الفصل له فكر واحد. ايه؟ الولاد في السن ده مثلا سن التين ايج ولا حتى دلوقتي بقى من ابتدائي بيفكروا في ايه؟ بوي فريند وجير فريند وانتي هوت ولا كيوت ولا مش عارف ايه وبتاع. ما الكلام ده بنسمعه كتير. او بقت الاكتر بقى دلوقتي اللي هو ايه؟ الترانسجندر ومش عارف ايه، وانت متاكد ان انت ولد ولا انت بتحب تلبس بناتي ولا حاجات من دي. فتخيلوا بقى الولاد وهو في فصل كده مليان بالمنظر ده. الولد بيحس نفسه ان هو ايه؟ alone. The children, they feel they are abandoned. They feel they are alone. They feel scared. But if I feel that my Lord Jesus Christ is going with me to the class, is sitting beside me in the class, why not? أقول لكم بقى إيه؟ Positive story. قلت لكم negative story. أقول لكم positive إيه؟ Story. In the days of the Soviet Union. You remember, or maybe you are young, يعني الرجالة مش young. They remember the Soviet Union and how they were teaching atheism in schools from kindergarten. يعني all of us now are speaking about the syllabus, the transgender. In the Soviet Union, all the country and in schools, there is no private schools. You cannot send your children to a private school. You cannot say, I will teach my children. There is no homeschooling. You have to send your children to public schools. And in public schools, what is the main syllabus before studying anything else? Atheism. And they bring the most brilliant and genius teachers having PhD. Can you imagine a teacher who have PhD in psychology and so on, and she is trying to convince the young generation, 5 and 6 years, there is no God. But what was the other force? There was the force of faith of the grandmothers. Even the fathers and mothers, some of them, they went into the Communist Party because they have benefits. يعني كتير من الآباء والأمهات دخلوا الحزب الشيوعي وما كانوا يعني بعدوا عن الكنيسة. ليه؟ في مكاسب. يدوهم كوبونات أكل، يدوهم مش عارف إيه، مش عارف بعد كام سنة يجيبوا له عربية، يدوا له شقة، يدوا يعني benefits. But the grandmothers, they were rooted in the faith. They begin to sow the faith in their grandchildren. In one school, there was a teacher. She was a PhD in psychology, and she began to put her poisonous thoughts in the kids. The class was only 6 years or 7 years old. And one of the girls, she felt the threaten. How can she fight back? بنت صغيرة كده حست التهديد كده ان المدرسة عمالة كل شوية ايه تخش من نقطة لنقطة على ان ايه مفيش ربنا. طب البنت بقى تقاوم ازاي؟ She began to go to the church every day. She was Catholic. فعندهم liturgy every day. Liturgy في الكاثوليك church بيبقى small يعني maybe half an hour or something, some of them, or 45 minutes. So she went to the liturgy and she asked from the priest to give her Holy Communion every day. Every day, because going to school, she passed by the church, attend the liturgy, and have Holy Communion. And one day it was the peak of the fight of the devil. So the teacher said, we will make a small كده لعبة كده game. So she said to the children, call Santa Claus or Baba Noel. And they begin to call his name. And she said, you can see now, when we call Santa Claus, he doesn't come because he's not real. And then call another historical figure. They call him, and then she said, you see, he is not here, so when we call him, he cannot come. And then she sent one of the children outside, and she said, call this child. When they call him, the child came in. And she said, if a person exists when we call him, he comes. If he doesn't exist, when we call him, he's not responding. قلت لهم شوفوا لما واحد موجود نناديه يجي. واحد مش موجود نناديه ما يجيش، مش موجود. تخيلوا ان الكلام ده بيتقال لاولاد عندهم كام سنه؟ 7 سنين. Who بقى confronted this? Who stood in front of this demonic power? This small girl. She stood up and she began to pray. And she says, oh baby Jesus, please come to us. And she closed her eyes and she began to repeat this prayer several times. After 2 minutes, another girl was encouraged. She stood and they began to call on Jesus together. After a while, another boy stood up and they began to call. After 5 minutes, all the class was calling for Jesus to come. بعد ربع ساعة كل الفصل وقف وهم مغمضين عينيهم وعمالين يقولوا تعالى أيها الطفل يسوع. And suddenly they found the door was opened, and then a ball of light came inside the class, and all the children saw it, and the teachers saw it, and inside this ball appeared baby Jesus. دخلت كولة من النار كده الفصل ووقفت قدامهم، وراح الطفل يسوع تجسم قدامهم. شافوه الأولاد كلها وشافته المدرسة. And he blessed them, and then he went away. The teacher couldn't believe, and she began to witness. He is real. He is real. المدرسة قعدت تصرخ تقول ده حقيقي، أنا شافته بعينيه. Through the faith of this young girl and small young class 6 years. عشان كده المسيح يقول لنا كده الذي فيكم أقوى من الذي في العالم. What is in you is more stronger than what is in the world. الذي فيكم أقوى من الذي في العالم. What we have is life. We have life inside us. What is in the world? Complete death. We have the light in us. What is in the world? Complete darkness. تخيلوا كده لما تقارنوا النور بالضلمة. ده شمعة صغيرة كده تعمل تبدد الضلمة. هو ده اللي احنا عايزين نزرعه في أولادنا. إن أنت منور، ما تطفيش نفسك. عشان كده بولس الرسول يقول لا تطفئوا الروح. Don't quench the Holy Spirit. لا تطفئوا الروح. علموها لأولادكم. اوعوا تطفئوا الروح. تخلوا أولادكم دايما منورين، تخلوا أولادكم دايما فرحانين. من الأمور اللي احنا محتاجينها جدا إن احنا نعلمها لأولادنا، إن احنا نشجعهم. We have to encourage them. We have to put in them positive thoughts. دايما نفهمه إن يسوع بيحبك. ما نقولش يسوع يزعل منك، ما نقولش يسوع لا، نقول يسوع بيحبك، يسوع يفرح بيك. دايما خلينا إيجابيين. قولي له يسوع فرحان بيك. خلي يسوع دايما يبقى جنبك. لما تعمل حاجة وحشة هو هيزعل، لكن هو بيحبك وفرحان بيك وعايز يبقى معك على طول. خلاص. فالمهم دي هتقروا يوحنا 14 و15 و16 و17. في آية في يوحنا جميلة قوي هقولها وهترجمها لأني أنا مش مركز أطلعها دلوقتي. يقول كده لا أحد يستطيع أن يخطف من يد أبي. هقولها تاني. لا أحد يستطيع أن يخطف من يد أبي. No one can take from the hand of my father. خليها في ذهنكم دي. الولاد لهم ضعفات، الولاد لهم مشاكل، الولاد في حاجة في السلوك بتاعهم، معلش نطول بالنا، نشجع، نخلينا وراهم زي المرض، نخلينا وراهم لغاية لما يتعالجوا. واخدين بالكم؟ الأذر فيرس المسيح بيطلب من الآب. يوحنا 17 دي كلها chapter John 17 is completely what? A prayer from our Lord Jesus Christ to the Father. Asking for what? Asking for the church. Saying what? Keep them in your name. احفظهم في في اسمك. كل يوم الصبح كده قبل الولاد ما ينزلوا تقولوا الرب المجد احفظهم في اسمك. المسيح قال كده لست أسأل أن تأخذهم من العالم ولكن أن تحفظهم من الشرير. I don't ask that you take them from the world but to keep them from the devil, from the demon. خلاص. يبقى احنا علينا واجب. انتوا خايفين على أولادكم، خليكوا إيجابيين. أنا مديكوا واجب اهو، روحوا اعملوه. 14 و15 و16 و17 في إنجيل يوحنا. خلاص. وعندكم مزمور 15 تحفظوه وتحفظوه للولاد. الولاد وهم نازلين كل يوم تقولوا له احفظهم في اسمك. كل ما تلاقوا نفسكم اضطربتوا كده وخايفين على الولاد واللي يقول لك المناهج لازم نكون مستعدين وكل حاجة، بس نقول ايه؟ لا يستطيع احد ان يخطف من يد ايه؟ ابي. شفتوا بقى ايه الطريقة اللي احنا نحفظ بيها اولادنا؟ المزامير والانجيل، الصلاة والانجيل، ملناش غيرهم. وايه تاني؟ القداس جسد ودم يسوع المسيح على المذبح كل يوم. لإلهنا كل مجد وكل كرامة من الآن. احنا فرحانين ان النهارده معانا كريستين عجايبي. هي ما بتتأخرش عننا الحقيقة، يعني she is professional in her field and يعني she will also give us advice about يعني how to keep our children safe in this environment. اهي جنبنا اهي هنجيبها يعني.
Thank you, Juan. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to try to mix a little bit of Arabic and English. It's mostly prepared in English, but I'll try to mix in a little bit of Arabic as we can. Thank you for the invitation to speak today on the psychological needs of our kids. I know there's 2 talks. I was requested to do the second one on bullying, but this one's more of a foundation of trying to understand kind of some of the psychological needs that our kids have as they're growing up in the world that we live in today. If you need to reach me at any point after the talk or to ask questions after the talk, there's a QR code on all the slides that you can reach me at, and it'll be at the end as well that you can reach me, the same slide again. So some of the goals that we have for our children goals to give them responsibility, مسؤولية, a good spiritual life, يبقوا قريبين لربنا, يبقى عندهم علاقات كويسة, يبقى عندهم تعليم كويس, إن يبقى عندهم صحي في الإيموشنز بتاعتهم, في المشاعر as well as في حياتهم in general, ويبقى عندهم أخلاق and morals and values. فربنا طبعا مدينا في الverse بتاع Jeremiah, and he knows the plans that he has for us, plans for رجاء ومستقبل. فإزاي هنساعد أولادنا إن يوصلوا للهدف ده بتاع ربنا, إن يبقى عندهم مستقبل ورجاء, hope and a future. اللي بنشوفه طبعا في أولادنا is the top of this iceberg. يعني لو شايفين الصورة دي, إحنا بنشوف زي it's like water, right? الأيسبرغ بيبقى شوية منه فوق وشوية منه بيبقى أكتر من تحت. فمرات بنشوف حاجات فوق المشاعر بتاعتهم أو هم حاسين بإيه, بس في حاجات كتيرة من تحت مش بنشوفها. So عايزين نشوف what the bottom of this iceberg looks like. ومرات بتحصل مشاكل struggles because development بتاعهم لسه ما وصلوش development معينة هنتكلم في ده النهاردة. مرات بنبقى عندنا expectations ليهم, عايزينهم يبقوا perfect في كل حاجة, وطبعا صعب ان يبقوا perfect في كل حاجة, فعايزين نguide them في المواقف دي. مرات بنبقى overprotective مش بنخليهم يتعلموا نفسهم يعملوا ايه. يبقوا overprotective فمش بنخليهم يتعلموا لوحدهم يعملوا ايه. We also لازم نعلمهم حاجات about the world that surround them. مرات بيبقى عندهم faulty thinking مش بيفكروا بطريقة صح. وبعدين في حاجات في mental health برضو لازم نركز فيها as well. On top of الحاجات دي we have a lot of stress. صح, there's a lot of stress around us. stress من المجتمع, stress من المدرسة, stress من أصحابهم في المدرسة. ففي حاجة اسمها eustress, which means stress that comes من things that are beneficial and good. يعني لو عندهم مثلا lots of sports, بيلعبوا sports, أو عندهم a lot of responsibilities, حتى الحاجات الكويسة ممكن تعمل stress. وطبعا الحاجات الصعبة ممكن تعمل stress. بس اللي عايزين نقوله إن مش كل stress is difficult. Okay? If we stay في ال green and yellow area of the stress, this can be a motivator. This stress can be a motivator, can push them, can help them to grow, can help them to be focused. And so this is an optimal level of stress. Okay? However, if you get into the orange or the red zone of this stress, this is when the stress is too much. There's not enough coping abilities. There's not enough coping strategies. And so because of that, الواحد becomes burned out. People burned out, people extremely stressed. They can even get sick physically or emotionally or psychologically. So hopefully we will work together النهاردة to see different ways to deal with this stress so it doesn't become overwhelming to the point that they're burned out. So what are some of the things that cause stress? طبعا an overwhelming amount in their schedule, if they're running late, too much academics, too much school, and not enough balance with social life, with friends, even coming to church. If there's problems between the parents and there's marital difficulties or financial difficulties, that's something that can impact the kids as well. البحث بيقول لنا إن for most kids there's a lot of pressure من the majority of these 5 areas. Okay, usually it is something related to school, academic pressure. That's number 1. مع أصحابهم في المدرسة, pressure with their peers. Either there's bullying, which we'll talk about in the next lecture, because that is a big topic by itself. So we dedicated an entire lecture to bullying. So relationship with peers is a big one. Relationship with their parents is another big one, because they have to learn to get along with mom and dad who may have a different opinion. Self-esteem, body image issues is a big one for children and adolescents. And then disappointment and rejection can be a big one as well. Also, if there's stress in the parents are struggling with work, with their own communication issues, financial issues, marital issues, if the parents themselves are overloaded and doing too much, all of these things together can create a little bit of stress in the parents. And so some of this can trickle down to the kids, and now the kids are stressed as well. بيبقى also مرات issues with if someone is a newcomer to the US, learning the system in the US, learning everything in the US, and if the kids are being raised in the US, يعني طبعا there's a difference in culture and things like that. How can you tell if your children are stressed? يعني there's many multiple signs. نعرف أولادنا how they're عندهم ضغط, عندهم stress. من their body, they have physical symptoms, they could have feelings, مشاعر symptoms, they could have behavioral symptoms في الطبع بتاعهم, and also في التفكير بتاعهم بيبقى في kind of stressors. So this slide right here tells you a little bit, I don't know if it's hard to see, but some stressors that you can tell for each of these directions. يعني ممكن حد يجي يقول لكم أنا عندي صداع على طول, أو معدتي بتوجعني على طول, okay? ده برضو ممكن يكون في حاجة psychological في النفسية مضايقاهم even though طالعة على جسمهم. في ناس بيجي لهم مرات rashes, and like I said, بس أكتر حاجة بنشوفها طبعا في patients بتاعتنا is things like headaches أو things like stomach aches usually. ممكن برضو يبقى عندهم confusion, مش عارفين يركزوا, مش عارفين يفكروا كويس, مش عارفين ما عندهمش نفس ياكلوا أو مش بيناموا كويس. دي كلها signals إن ممكن يكون الواحد عنده ضغط كتير. فايه اللي بيحصل في الاولاد بتاعنا لما يبقى عندهم ضغط كتير ومش عارفين يعبروا مش عارفين يتكلموا مش عارفين يقولوا ايه؟ ممكن يمسكوا في البروبلمز بتاعتهم وما يتكلموش. Okay, and you could tell من البادي language بتاعتهم يبقوا يعني they look stressed بس they hold in their problems. في أولاد تانيين they act out يعني يطلعوا المشاعر دي كلها لبرا، يبقوا متنرفزين متضايقين زعلانين، ممكن يعيطوا كتير، ممكن بيتنرفزوا كتير، وممكن روحهم المعنوية تنزل شوية، self esteem تنزل شوية. فإحنا البيرنتس والسيرفنتس نساعدهم المفروض إن يبقى عندهم بالانس بين المشاكل أو البروبلمز وبين إزاي نشيل الضغط ده منهم، يبقى عندهم coping skills إن يعرفوا يشيلوا الضغط ده شوية منهم. So يبقى عندهم a balance between ال coping skills وال stresses. مش هنعرف نشيل كل ال stresses، العالم طبعا فيه stress كتير، فإزاي هنستحمل أو مش نستحمل، إزاي نقاوم أو نشتغل على ال stresses دي عشان نشيل الضغط ده منهم بطريقة كويسة. فأهم حاجة نشوفها إن نعرف إن كل طفل معنا is very unique. Okay, حتى لو عندكم 3 أولاد أو you know 3 children أو 2 children in your house، مش everyone is the same. يعني مش عامل this child like this child like this child. كل واحد عنده طبع وشخصية personality، كل واحد عنده strengths weaknesses، وكل واحد عنده حاجة unique لنفسه. لازم نديهم حب unconditional love عشان يعرفوا يسألوا for help لما بيبقى في help. لو الأب والأم مش عارفين يعبروا على how to deal with the stress أو يقول لهم بس it's okay أو من we don't deal with المشكلة دي هتعمل مشكلة أكتر. Okay. لازم الأب والأم يبقوا consistent مع أولادهم. البحث بيقول لنا الريسيرش إن kids that grow up in a consistent communication in their home, it has to be consistent. بيطلعوا secure و self-confident، عندهم good body image، عندهم good relationships لما يكبروا. It's really, really important إن نبقى consistent with them as they grow older. This is really, really important. Another thing لازم نبص فيها إن يبقى عندنا looking at ال children بتاعتنا مش من ناحية واحدة. We have to look at them from a bio-psycho-social perspective. معناها إن they're still developing في المخ بتاعهم, and I'll show you a slide about that in a few minutes. المخ بتاعهم لسه developing all the way to age 25 أو 26 أو maybe even 27. Okay? فالbrain is still developing. Usually it's the part that's right behind the forehead. It's called the frontal lobe. And this is important for the executive functioning of the brain. Yani it's important for good decision making, impulse control, emotional control. All of that area of the brain is still developing until age 25 or 26. So if they're acting impulsive, if they're acting moody, this is part of them growing up. It's normal. And if you're tired, it's also important to know, and you're not doing this alone. Okay? You have to know that you're يعني in a village, انتوا في كنيسة، انتوا عندكم أصحاب في كنيسة، عندكم خدام تانيين، عندكم طبعا الآباء الكهنة. And so you should use your village to help and support and encourage you. Another thing عايزين نديها to أولادنا, this is a lovely quote by واحد اسمه Hooding Carter, and he said that the 2 things that we give to our children is roots and wings. Okay, so yani we put roots and values in them, but at the same time we have to give them wings to fly and to explore and to learn about yani the world around them, but within parameters. Another thing that we should do is, Abuna was just saying, we have to be positive with our kids. We have to give them optimism. Okay, when they're coming with negative things that are happening, yani not to pretend that there's nothing negative happening. There could be something negative happening, of course, but so we're helping them to problem solve and turn it into something optimistic. The other thing that we want to give our children is resilience. Yani again, there's going to be problems and challenges and difficulties and hagat, yani they're struggling with it. But so we want to talk about ways to adapt to the difficulty or adapt from the difficulty, not just to give up when there's only problems, and help them to kind of move forward from that difficulty. We also have to focus على their strengths. ايه هم قويين في ايه؟ عشان مش بس نقول ان هم عندهم weaknesses وعندهم مشاكل وعندهم حاجات مش بيعملوها صح. ايه اللي بيعملوه صح ونخلي اللي بيعملوه صح يصلح الحاجات اللي مش صح. So the strength building is much better than weakness fixing. Okay? يعني we always طبعا we pick on الحاجات اللي بيعملوها غلط بس برضو نشوف الحاجات اللي بيعملوها صح ونصلح فيها أكتر وأكتر. ونبص for their abilities not just their weaknesses. وطبعا البيرنتس عندهم an influence على their children. بيساعدوهم في حاجات كتيرة بيعلموهم حاجات كتيرة and this is really important as well. في بحث طلع من سنتين or so, so very recent research, بيقول إن parents' attitudes to their children لازم يبقى دافي, لازم يبقى caring, لازم يقول ال expectations اللي عندنا للأولاد بتاعنا نقول لهم الصح من الغلط إيه, مش بس نسيبهم يربوا نفسهم أو ما نقولهمش الصح من الغلط. لازم يبقى في كلام بيننا وبين أولادنا, lots of communication. وكل ما بيكبروا الكوميونيكيشن لازم يكتر مش يقل, لأن طبعا دلوقتي عندنا التليفونات وعندهم أصحاب وعندهم حاجات في المدرسة بيسمعوها. لازم يبقى في an open dialogue و relationship بتتبني من هم صغيرين لغاية ما يكبروا. ولازم يبقى في discipline. مرات الديسيبلين بيبقى punishment, وأنا مش بحب كلمة punishment يعني عقاب صعب, عقاب يكسر البنت أو الولد اللي قدامنا ده, فده مش عقاب صح. الديسيبلين جاية من كلمة disciple, to teach, to guide. ودي حاجة أصعب. It takes more work إن تعملوا disciples. It takes more work, more effort, more being proactive to teach our kids. يعني so we have to discipline them, نقول لهم الصح من الغلط and all of these things. ولازم يبقى في connection بين المدرسة وبين البيت. Again, there's research برضو recent from 2021, يعني about 3 years old. And older research كمان برضو بيقول إن there has to be a positive learning environment في المدرسة وفي البيت عشان يبقى في connection بين المدرسة والبيت. فلازم يبقى في communication بين المدرسين والprincipals والcounselors في المدرسة and the parents. والcommunication دي بيخليهم يبقى عندهم learning activities at home مش بس في المدرسة. فلازم يبقى في resources و learning opportunities both بين المدرسة وبين البيت. Again, ليه بنقول كده؟ Because العيل ده مش one entity, مش حاجة واحدة. They're biological, psychological, social, and spiritual in one person. Okay? So we have to pay attention to all of these areas at the same time. البايو, psycho, social, and spiritual. طبعا البيولوجي إن عندنا genetics وعندنا التكوين بتاع المخ بتاعنا وكل واحد different في الحاجات دي. Okay? بس برضو السايكولوجيكال التفكير والسوشيال الأصحاب والكنيسة والspiritual طبعا الكنيسة. فكل الحاجات دي لما تبقى connected مع بعض بتعمل الطفل ده very strong. زي ما قلت لكم a few minutes ago, المخ بتاع الأولاد بتاعنا لسه ينمو لغاية سن 25 أو 26 years old. Okay, very long time. It takes يعني if you're dealing with teenagers, if you're dealing with young kids, it could be up to 20 years until their brain is fully developed. Especially on the picture on the right is the red part of the brain. Like I said, that's the executive functioning part of the brain, and each piece of the brain has a purpose, from memories to what allows us to يعني sleep and wake up, what gives us an appetite. يعني when I teach this to my college students, this is an extensive lecture that can go up يعني 3-4 lectures to teach about how the brain functions. But anyway, the red part is the part that is developing all the way to almost 24, 25, 26, even 27 years old. Okay? That's impulse control, executive functioning, decision making, all of these areas. All right? Additionally, children have needs. Yani we all have needs. Okay? Your basic needs, first of all, are food, shelter, water. All right? You have a need for safety. You have a need for love and belonging. and you need to have good self-esteem. If you have these needs met, research tells us and we can get to a place where we're reaching our full potential. But if they're missing any of these needs that come from unconditional love from their family, needs for having good confidence, روحهم المعنوية تبقى كويسة, an opportunity يلعبوا مع أولاد تانيين وبنات تانيين يتعلموا من بعض, encouragement, تشجيع من الparents ومن الteachers. لازم يبقى عندهم a secure environment, حاسين إن هم عندهم safety في البيت بتاعهم, حد بياخد باله منهم, حد بيربيهم صح, وبيديهم good guidance و good discipline. Okay? البحث بيقول لنا لما يبقى عندنا الحاجات دي, we can feel إن مبتدين على البottom ووصلنا all the way to the top, step by step by step. الself esteem والروح المعنوية والmeaning والpurpose والحاجات دي مش بتيجي في يوم وليلة. It's something that we have to build يوم ورا يوم ورا يوم. هنتكلم في كل البوينتس دي النهارده in detail. So البوينتس دي is الneeds بتاعت الكيدز بتاعتنا عشان يبقوا healthy from a biology, psychology, spiritual و social perspective. Okay? So أهم حاجة first of all is the sense of connection. لازم يحسوا إن في connection بيني وبين my parents. إني ممكن أقول لهم أي حاجة, they're not going to judge me, مش هيزعقوا فيا, مش هيزعلوا مني, and الparents يعلموهم over and over and over again. لازم يبقى في عندهم يحسوا إن عندهم قوة. طبعا في decisions كتيرة بتتعمل للأولاد بتاعنا لأن لسه صغيرين. بس في decisions حتى هم صغيرين قوي they can make for themselves. دي بتعلمهم يبقى عندهم power و courage. فالdecisions حتى وهم صغيرين if they can pick between two things that gives them an ability to make decisions good. We have to develop boundaries. إن مش كل حاجة إذا أوكي نعملها. لازم نديهم their space عشان يعرفوا يفكروا ويصلوا والحاجات دي in their own time and space. لازم يبقى عندهم نخليهم يقولوا على المشاعر بتاعتهم إيه. لأن لو ما قالوش على المشاعر بتاعتهم هتطلع المشاعر حاجة واحدة, نرفزة. لأن مش عارفين يعبروا أنا متضايق, أنا زعلان, حد ضايقني, فبتطلع في behavior of نرفزة أو even destruction. They have to spend time outside, حتى even in the winter, يعني it's not too cold today, but even in the winter, if they can go, يعني have energy and time, they can go spend some time at a park. There's research that says spending time in nature is good. And they have to play. ولازم يبقى عندنا hugs and things like that from the parents. Okay. The psychological needs برضو according to the American Psychological Association, similar things. لازم يبقى عندهم comfort, لازم يبقى عندهم the ability to make their own decisions, يعملوا قرارات لنفسهم, a sense of security, عندهم روحهم المعنوية تبقى كويسة, ويبقى عندهم belonging مع أصحاب, مع في كنيسة, في مدرسة, في both. فتعال نتكلم في each one of النقط دي. The first and most important thing لازم نبنيه في أولادنا is يبقى عندنا connection معهم, very good strong connection. لأن العالم طبعا outside بيحاول يشد من ال other direction, right? So لازم إحنا يبقى عندنا a very strong connection and built with our kids عشان يجوا يكلمونا على المشاكل اللي هم عندهم. لأن بيبقى عندنا مرات تفكير إن دول أطفال ما عندهمش مشاكل, ما عندهمش حاجات بيفكروا فيها. In fact, المشكلة is even worse for kids لأن ما عندهمش لسه التعبير يقولوا هم اللي حاسين بيه. Okay? فالconnection دي بتساعد, عارفين ومتعلمين إيه أولادنا عندهم في المشاكل بتاعتهم في المدرسة or wherever else it is. فدي حاجة مهمة قوي لازم نقولها لأولادنا. So, do you really see your child? Okay? There's a verse in the Bible, I believe, for Genesis, about the God that sees. Yani God that sees me and knows my feelings and knows my emotions. I love this verse very much. And he truly feels and is compassionate to us. He knows our pain. And he lived in the same earth that we live in, right? For he knows the pains and the struggles and the difficulties that we go through. For do you see your children? Do you see their pain? Do you see their struggle? How do you notice them? What makes them special? What makes them unique? Do you make them feel seen and heard? Okay? Because you're representing God to them. For do you see them and do you hear them? Do you label your child as being difficult? okay? We're going to talk about the difficult child shortly, and I'm doing it in quotes because everybody has their own talents and things like that we should look at. The other thing is, do you connect with them first about their feelings and understand them without shouting? Before you come and say that this child is a problem, do you notice what they're feeling and understand them? In order for the child to open up to you and to express themselves and to create that connection, you need to be warm, you need to be genuine, you need to be empathetic, you need to be consistent, and you need to be patient. And I'm a parent too, so I know that sometimes these things are a little hard. You're human, you're tired, you've had long days, but make special time to spend just with them, okay? Because what's going to happen is, they're going to reveal something to you, and you're supposed to listen with a piece of understanding is very small. So they have to talk a lot, and you have to listen a lot to get that understanding to be bigger, okay? And you have to be a good role model. It's very difficult for a child to know what to do. They're still learning, right? So you have to be a good role model. So there's several parenting styles, all right? Some of them good, some of them not good. Let's talk about all of them. البيرنتنج عشان يبقى عندنا parents لازم ندي من نفسنا للأولاد بتوعنا. لازم empathize. Empathy معناها مش بس نقول له oh I'm so sorry، بس نحس بالمشاعر بتاعتهم ايه اللي هم نحسوا بيه. لو حد زعق فيهم في المدرسة، لو حد عمل لهم حاجة في المدرسة، هم نحسين بإيه. فحطوا نفسكم في الموقف بتاعهم تحسوا بإيه لو أنتوا في الموقف ده. It's called empathy. Empathy. You have to تدي من نفسكم. زي الصورة دي بندي من نفسنا شوية شوية شوية، هم يكبروا ويتعلموا. فأول حاجة بيعملوها المام والداد مرات ومش حاجة صح، إني أول ما يبقى في مشكلة يروحوا they rescue على طول، يطلعوا من المشكلة. أوكي؟ الغلط في ده إن مش بيعرفوا يتصرفوا لنفسهم، مش بيعرفوا يتصرفوا لنفسهم. أول ما يبقى في مشكلة على طول ماما وبابا يدخلوا ويشيلوهم من المشكلة وما تعلموش anything في المشكلة دي. أوكي؟ Instead حاولوا تعلموهم إن هنحل المشكلة دي مع بعض. أوكي؟ أنت تقول لي من ناحيتك، أنا هقول لك من ناحيتي، ومع بعض هنحل المشكلة دي. أو مع بعض نروح نكلم التيتشر، أو مع بعض نروح نكلم البرنسبل. أوكي؟ مش أنت لوحدك ومش أنا هحلها لوحدي either. The other problem إني ممكن الأب والأم lecture. أنا قلت لك و point your finger و lecture them ونقول لهم إيه الصح من الغلط بزعيق أو بزعل أو بنرفزة. That's also wrong. لأن الطفل ده هيقول أنا كل ما أجي أقول لهم على حاجة they're gonna lecture me. مش هيقولوا لي حل. They're just gonna يقولوا لي أنا اللي صح وأنت اللي غلط and that's the end of it. فدي مشكلة برضو. The third way إني مرات بيعملوا parents إني they distract them. يعني يجوا يقولوا لكم على حاجة ونقول لهم أو الموقف ده صعب نحله، فنحاول نشيلهم من المشكلة دي بسرعة، distract them عشان ينسوها we don't have to solve this problem. Okay? أول كل حاجة مش هتتنسي. It's probably gonna get bigger. If it's a problem يعني a real problem, it's probably gonna get bigger. وفي نفس الوقت كده ما تعلموش how to fix the problem. ما تعلموش ازاي يصلحوا المشكلة. They just see mom or dad distracted me. Another wrong way of communicating is passive. Passive معناها إني I just let them do whatever they want and I don't talk at all. I stay quiet and maybe the problem will go away by itself. Okay? I feel uncertain. I don't talk about it at all. Okay? Again, this passive way of communicating is not good. It's not good even when we communicate together as adults. Yani if somebody bothers me, instead of having a mature discussion, I just let everything go. Okay? Unfortunately, what we see when we just let it go, and it builds resentment over and over and over and over, and then eventually there's an explosion. Okay? The other wrong way to communicate is aggressively. Aggressively means every time I'm faced with a problem, I yell, I scream, I shout at them, I shout at whoever, I make threats, I get angry with them. And this is usually because the parent is going through a difficulty and they're not dealing with their own issues and they take it out on somebody else, usually the kids. Okay? For the best way to communicate is something called assertive. All right? Meaning, I'm concerned about your emotions. I'm concerned about my emotions and what's right and wrong. And we make a discussion together until we come up with a solution. Okay? You understand their perspective and they understand your perspective. You're not being rude or disrespectful. You're being very firm at the same time. Okay? And so this kind of, this assertiveness is really important. And it makes clear and firm requests. But at the same time, ما فيش any تهديد, ما فيش any threats. You are fair, you are consistent, and you are focused on every angle of this situation, not just one angle. Okay? يعني في طبعا there's 4 kinds of parenting styles. If you look at this chart, this is a really good chart in terms of how much rules you give to your kids, how much love you give to your kids. Okay? The best one is the one in yellow. I'll come to that one last. Did it go away? It's back? Everybody can see? Okay. So I'm going to go to the yellow one last, okay? If you look at the top right, this is parents مش بيدوا قوانين a lot, not a lot of rules, okay? But they give them a lot of love, all right? I think this is called with Arabic المحبة الضارة, right? Too much love, not enough rules, right? For this kid grows up in a world, everything is okay, all right? If I speed down the highway, it's okay. If I go and steal, it's okay. If I hurt somebody else's feeling, it's okay. There's no rules. There's no framework that says right from wrong. Obviously, this is not good because the world is filled with rules. The Bible is filled with rules, right? There has to be rules. There has to be parameters of yes versus wrong. Yes versus no. The bottom right, neglectful. This is a parent who has no love and has no rules. For they just leave their kids, and their kids raise themselves, and nobody's telling them right from wrong. Obviously, this is a problem, right? You need to love people, you need to love your kids, but there also has to be rules. The one on the bottom left, authoritarian, this one's really not good either. This is someone who has too much rules and not enough love. This is a dictator, okay? And you rule with an iron fist, and you say, this is the way it has to be. There's no negotiation, there's no discussion. And sometimes you have to do that as a parent. But if you do this all the time, you're going to break them. And that's not good, all right? So the best one, believe it or not, is lots of love and lots of rules. That's the yellow one called authoritative, all right? And this makes these kids, as they grow up, they know that there's a lot of expectations from mom and dad. They know that mom and dad are very consistent in their discipline. There are consequences for breaking the rules, but there's a lot of respect. Okay, there's a lot of ihtiram in this family because the parents respect the kids and the kids bihtirmu the parents, and it's back and forth. It's not one direction only. A lot of times parents think they have to respect me, but then I don't have to respect them. That's wrong. It's mutual respect. And research tells us that these kids become successful, respectful, able to follow rules, able to be more creative and solve problems. And so it's really, really good way to deal with things, okay? Another need that kids have is a need for power. And I'm not saying control. I said power, all right? Control is different than power. Control means I have to control everybody. But power, I have to feel like I'm able to make my own decisions, all right? So here's where I tell parents, don't get into a power struggle. Learn to pick your battles, okay? Is this a battle that I can negotiate or I can let go? Or do I have to fight every battle? If I fight every battle, it's going to be a power struggle all the time, all right? Now, I'm not saying let your kids come into church wearing something inappropriate, but if they want to wear this color versus this color, can you let that go? Is there something that you can let go and give them the ability to make a decision, okay? So they need to feel autonomous as well so that there's no power struggle all the time, okay? So think about that. I know that one's a tough one, but it's important that you allow them to make their own decisions at times, okay? But within reason, within reason. There are times you have to put your foot down and say, no, I'm not going to allow this, or if they're going somewhere with their friends, but sometimes you have to negotiate. I just had a moment like that with my kids literally just yesterday. You know, I was almost going in one direction, and then they tried to convince me in another, and we met somewhere in the middle, okay? So just be aware of that as well. All right. You need to establish boundaries in any one of your relationships, and this is a tricky one for a lot of people because they think boundaries means I'm shutting the door and creating a wall in my relationships. But boundaries, think of boundaries as the borders of a country, okay? If you all decided to go to Canada today, there's a border, right? And they ask you a bunch of questions at the border. How long are you going to be here? Where are you going? Why are you here? Is there anything in your car that you need to declare? And you answer these questions and they let you go. They let you go through, right? If you seem a little suspicious, then they don't let you go and they search you some more, right? So if we have boundaries in countries, we should also have boundaries around our hearts sometimes. We know what is coming in and what is going out. It is guidelines about how we want to be treated, all right? So sometimes, let's say in the preteen to teenage years, kids become a little bit rude, to be quite frank, right? Sometimes. So we have to put a boundary and say this is not acceptable to speak this way, all right? And in declaring these boundaries, you're talking about how you want to be respected, how you want to be loved. They should know what boundaries to cross, what boundaries not to cross. When they start driving at 16, 17, there needs to be a boundary. You can't come home at 11 o'clock or midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning and just come and go when you please. There's a boundary, okay? Hudud. There's a hudud that you cannot cross. El-hudud btigi in what way? Time boundaries, okay? Sometimes mom and dad need to work. So you can't interrupt me right now between this hour and this hour because I need to work. But they also need your time. So create time for them. There's physical boundaries. Some physical boundaries we shouldn't cross. Conversation boundaries, things that we can talk about, things that we should not talk about. Relationships, content, personal boundaries. So we have to set boundaries with our kids, okay? And boundaries in our relationships in general. But a boundary is an open border. It just creates limitations of hudud to what is happening in that relationship. All right, this is also a tricky one. Kids need personal space, all right? Sometimes parents are hovering over their kids 24 hours a day. What are you doing now? What are you doing now? What are you doing now? What are you looking at? What are you reading? There's no space to breathe, to think with their own mind, okay? Now again, I'm not saying to just let it be a free-for-all. Lots of rules, lots of respect, and also some space so they can think for themselves, okay? So give your kids space, but within boundaries. It should be structured. That doesn't mean no limitations on the phone, all right? My kids, for example, on their phones, they can't download anything without it coming through me first. So I know what's on their phone. But if I'm going to go through the phone, go through it together, have discussions about safety on the phones, but also give them space, okay? So give them space without being overbearing. Another important thing is that we need to give them permission to feel, okay? A lot of times parents, especially to boys, say, boys don't cry. Don't cry about this, or don't get upset about this, or what are you upset about? This is not a big deal. To boys and girls, this is not a big deal. But it's a big deal to them. So we have to give them permission to feel. Feelings, number one, are sometimes hard to identify, all right? I have adult patients that have a hard time identifying their feelings, okay? I have adult patients that have difficulty identifying their feelings. The problem here is feelings are data. They're telling us why we're having the feeling that we're having. It's telling us information about what we should do. I'll explain more in a minute, all right? Maybe ask your child, what helps you to stay calm? What makes you agitated? What makes you stressed? Feelings are necessary for survival, truly, all right? If you don't have a feeling, you don't know what the experiences are in the world around you. And while even adults have difficulty naming their feelings, at the very least, start with these 4, okay? And then it can get more complex from there, which I'll also show you. But our basic emotions are either happy, anxious, depressed or sad, or fear. They're necessary for survival. So oftentimes I help patients identify feelings by looking at the center of that chart and then branching out by the color to get to more complex emotions. All right? Again, emotions are necessary for survival. Why? If you are angry, it usually means there's something unjust happening. And anger is the collector of all of the other emotions, meaning if you feel unheard, if you feel unappreciated, if you feel tired, if you feel hungry, your go-to emotion is usually anger. But that usually is telling you that there's something unfair, there's something wrong happening. It helps us to stand up for ourselves. So anger is an emotion that we need, all right? But it has to be controlled in terms of behavior. Meaning, I understand your emotion of anger, but you can't act out. You can't throw around, punches or throw a chair around because you're angry. So I acknowledge that something is bothering you. Let's slow down and talk about what that is, okay? Fear is another adaptive emotion, anxiety. It helps us to pause and maybe think before we act. And the same with sadness. Sadness can tell us that there's something wrong and to help cleanse us of these emotions as well. And there's chemicals in the brain that are associated with sadness that we can release that way. Another thing that is important is that we need to spend time in nature. There's plenty of research that talks about being in nature as a calming atmosphere. It literally calms down. There's something in the body called the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps us to calm down. And being in nature allows that to kind of be activated. So ask your kids, where do you find peace? Where do you find joy? Oftentimes, recess is over by 5th grade, 4th grade. They don't have any more time to take breaks to go out after 4th grade. Nature is really important, and it keeps us separate from just school and work cycle all the time. School and work, school and work, school and work. This helps to break the cycle to go to the park. So playing is really important for kids as well, kids of all ages. It helps them to understand, to kind of understand what's going on in their mind. It helps them to kind of relax. It helps them to solve problems. So play is really, really important as well. We also have to be aware of kids' temperament, okay? كل واحد فينا عنده شخصية وعنده طبع، والطبع ده ممكن بنتولد بيه بس برضه بنتربى بيه. فالتمبرمنت ده مش بس بيقول لنا إني هيبقى ده عصبي بعدين أو حاجات زي كده، بس ممكن يغير في الطريقة اللي بيتعلموا بيها، الطريقة اللي بيتعاملوا بيها مع الناس، الطريقة اللي بيحسوا أو عندهم مشاعر. فلما يبقى عندهم التمبرمنت الصعب ده شوية، لازم نساعدهم في كذا حاجة. مثلا نخليهم يبقى عندهم self-regulation، إني نعرف نقول لهم لما يبقى عندكم emotion help them to calm down بالdeep breaths. بنقعد معاهم calmly ونشوف إيه المشكلة، لأن الكيدز في السن الصغير بالذات they get agitated بسرعة، لأن مش عارفين يعبروا عن اللي هم حاسين بيه. حاجة ضايقتهم ممكن يبقوا منفعلين بسرعة. فلازم نعلمهم حاجة اسمها self-regulation، معناها أقفوا دقيقة ثانية think for 10 seconds أو 30 seconds عشان نعرف calm down نحل المشكلة دي. Okay? But oftentimes you see kids أول ما يبقى عندهم مشكلة they talk fast, they get angry, they get agitated. We have to calm them down. إحنا اللي نبقى calm عشان هم يبقوا calm يتعلموا مننا as well. sometimes الkids دي في kids اسمهم strong-willed kids، زي كل حاجة يبقوا شكلهم stubborn، بيعاندوا، okay؟ بس هم مش بيعاندوا، مش الkids دي you have to be extra gentle with them بس في نفس الوقت في discipline. All right? Usually kids اللي عندهم this حاجة اسمها exuberant personality. This exuberant personality معناها إن ممكن بيتنرفزوا ويبقوا stubborn، يبقوا عندهم stubborn شوية، بس الطريقة اللي الأب والأم بيعلموا بيها دي اللي هتخليهم يبقوا calm حتى لو التمبرمنت بتاعتهم صعبة شوية. فدي حاجة مهمة جدا. مثلا لو بتقولوا لهم على حاجة and they're resisting، يلا اصحى النهارده الصبح عندنا مدرسة، make your bed, time to brush your teeth, time to have breakfast، كل السكيدجولز والروتين دي. مرات بيتنرفزوا ويبقوا متضايقين حتى لما بنصحيهم in the morning، فنقول لهم again it's okay to be upset. I understand مش عايز تروح المدرسة النهارده، sometimes انتوا مش عايزين تروحوا الشغل that day، correct؟ بس في نفس الوقت how can I help you to get through this day؟ يعني what do you need to help you to get through this day? Okay, what would help you? مثلا do I need do you need a hug? Do you need me to help you put your book bag together? Do you need a certain breakfast that will help you? يعني it's simple things like this that can يعني even change their mood and get them involved in creating their own schedule. Okay? حاولوا برضو تقولوا لأولادكم from the night before أو a couple days before هنعمل كده on Saturday، هنعمل كده on Sunday. This gets them prepared. مش we have to go وخلاص. It gets them prepared about what they have to do. Okay? We'll make time to spend time with your kids مش بس في الدiscipline. مش بس في الدiscipline. Take them to the park, take them to the mall. Have يعني some space and time with them to build that relationship. Okay? Oftentimes, البحث بيقول لنا at least as kids get older, by the time they're teenagers, there's no more physical affection. طبعا البيبيز we cuddle them and we hold them and we play with them. But as they get older, يعني sometimes kids they still need this affection, but so we don't give it to them. So pay attention to that as well. Then there's things and needs that kids have to develop strength and to feel يعني elevated and knowledgeable and those kinds of things. Happy children usually عندهم مشاعر بيعرفوا يعبروا عنها، عندهم ناس they can connect to that they love, they feel heard and accepted, they can stand and think on their own، عندهم ناس فاهمين اللي هم حاسين بيه، وعندهم ناس ممكن تتأسف ليهم لما يبقى عندهم زعل أو ضيقة. Finally, عايزين نعلم our kids resilience. Resilience معناها إن طبعاً هيبقى في مشاكل in our world. إزاي نحل المشكلة دي مع بعض؟ لازم نبقى flexible، لازم بالتعليم، ولازم نبقى adaptable. فلازم نبقى flexible، مش كل حاجة حواليهم هتبقى perfect. زي الوردة دي is growing في أرض ما فيهاش soil، ما فيهاش nutrients. بس الأولاد دي بتتعلم برضو من إن إزاي تكبر وتبقى عندهم adaptability. One of the things اللي بتخليهم يتعلموا is to practice gratitude. طبعا الكنيسة بتاعتنا عندها صلاة الشكر، طبعا بنقولها في كل مرحلة من الجنازة للمعمودية للفرح، في كل حاجة بنقول صلاة الشكر. البحث دلوقتي بيقول لنا إن الواحد لما بيشكر بيغير تفكيره من حاجة negative لحاجة positive، بيغير تفكيره completely. والكنيسة ليها 2000 سنة بتقول Thanksgiving prayer، فالكنيسة طبعا فاهمة الحاجات دي من قبل ما البحث بيقوله. في بحث برضو بيقول لنا لما بنركز في positive emotions، في 10 positive emotions، مشاعر positive، بتخلي الواحد بيعرف يفكر أحسن ويكبر في مخه ويعرف يحل المشاكل أحسن. وكذا واحدة من دول زي fruits of the spirit. Okay? ففي overlap تاني بين الكنيسة وبين أو الإنجيل وبين البحث اللي بنشوفه. يعني لما بنركز في المشاعر دي بتخلي تفكيرنا بنكبر التفكير بتاعنا ونعرف نحل كذا مشكلة. أهم حاجة نعرفها طبعا إن اللي أنتوا بتعملوه it matters. You have to adapt parenting بتاعكم للطفل، طبعا بتعلموهم بس مع التعليم اللي بنعلمه لهم كل child is unique، فمش أطبق طريقة واحدة على كل الأولاد اللي عندي في البيت، لازم كل واحد باليونيك طريقة بتاعته، ولازم نحترمهم زي ما عايزينهم هم يحترمونا. فالاحترام دي حاجة مهمة جدا جدا جدا. آخر حاجة عشان نبقى resilient. Again نبقى عندنا gratitude، يبقى عندنا شكر. نعرف ايه الحاجات اللي هم قويين فيها، السترينثs بتاعتهم، ونكتر في السترينثs دي. نبقى عندنا وقت فيه هدوء ورسبكت وكايند اوف نقعد مع بعض بهدوء ونتكلم في المشاكل بهدوء ونسيفر الوقت ده. في بحث بيقول لنا لما بنمشي بسلو داون، مش كل حاجه جري على طول كويكلي بنسيفر الاكسبيرينسز دي في بنك في المخ بتاعنا، ولما يبقى عندنا مشكله بنطلع من البنك ده وازاي نصلح المشاكل اللي قدامنا. فلازم نexamine الستوري بتاعت الريزيلينس بتاعنا، ويبقى عندنا kindness ولوف وحاجات زي كده للأولاد بتاعتنا. لو مش عارفين تتكلموا مع الأولاد بتاعكم على إيه، this is a great website في questions, 255 questions that you can ask your kids to start a conversation. Sometimes it's hard to start a conversation, right? وكل مرة بنقول لهم how was school today? How was school today? How was school today? It's the same boring question every day. For this, gives you a little bit unique ways to ask the same thing. All right, most important thing is not to yell. This breaks their spirit. I think this is very powerful. Okay, this quote, I'm going to read it in English, and I hope everybody gets it. How you speak to your children becomes their inner voice. So if you are criticizing them all the time, their inner voice is going to be critical. If you are loving and positive and kind and generous and supportive and know their strengths and a builder, that becomes their inner voice, okay? And so when they're off to college one day, when they're off in their own families, these voices stick in their mind. So please, please, please do not become overly critical, do not break them. This is the way to do things. Having a parent who listens creates a child who believes he or she has a voice in the world that matters. So if you listen, other people are going to listen too. And they're going to be expecting that from others and building those boundaries. All right. Poor parenting involves lack of trust and respect, poor communication, not providing comfort. You are their source of comfort. Please provide them with comfort. Rejecting or neglecting parents, severe parenting, overly permissive, overly indulgent, expecting perfection, expect working hard, okay, and the good journey, not just expectations at the end. A parent who's not patient is not a good parent as well, and a parent who's inconsistent is also poor parenting, okay? So just remember these things. And finally, if there are things that are breaking you, this is one of my favorite practices out of Japan. It's called kintsugi. And anytime they have pottery in Japan that is broken, they don't throw it away. They collect the pieces and glue it back together with gold. The point is that you are not broken when you are hurt or upset. You are more valuable, you are more strong, you are more beautiful because of these broken parts, all right? So when your children get broken by the world, heal them with gold, and always remember to be patient. Another one of my favorite pictures, this is hanging in my office, and I love this painting very much because it shows a lot of potential that we have if we are patient. This is an artist from Belgium named René Magritte, and he's painting this picture looking at an egg, but drawing a bird. And the bird it's at its full potential. So we have to be patient. We have to be kind to our kids. We have to realize their potential even when they're still an egg, that one day they will be a full functioning bird. Kindness is loaning someone your strength instead of reminding them of their weakness. So always remind them of their strengths and build them up from there. And if you can't do it by yourself, that's okay. Individually, we are one drop, and together we are an ocean. If you need more resources, here's a bunch of websites, which you will also find on my website. So thank you very much, and we will have part 2 about specifically bullying after a break, I believe. Thank you. Questions?
Do you have the papers? Does anybody just raise your hand if you have a question? We can pick them up.
Okay. Thank you. If they're in Arabic, I'm going to need some help. I can speak, but reading and writing is not my strength. I can read and write, but very slowly. We'll be here until tomorrow. All right. All right, I'll try to read these as we go. First of all, thank you for the comment about thanking me for the wealth of great advices. We have a problem with our children. Please give us a word in addressing, I'm just going to say in general, people that are different than us, different than our maybe faith practices or, just different in general. The world has many varieties of kinds of people out there, and so let me just address it from a general perspective there rather than naming one particular group. I would say that we first of all have to, teach our kids our values, about, the church's values, our familial values, all of these things without demeaning or disrespecting another person. Just because their values are different than us, we don't have to follow them. We don't have to do the same things as them. Our values are our values, and they're always going to be our values, and they're grounded in the Bible and in, in our faith and things like that. But we have to treat our kids, all people, with respect, all right? If they're different than us, and if they're not going to do things like us, that's fine. They're going to be different than us, and we don't have to follow everything that is said. But at the same time, we don't hate, we don't demean, we don't bully, we don't disrespect. This person is still a person that was created by God. If they've made, choices to live a different way, then God will change their hearts. So let's take our, not understanding this other, group of people if they're not the same values, and let's take that opportunity to pray for them and also teach our kids the values that we have, okay? And so ultimately we can't raise them in a bubble where they're going to be separated from everybody else that is different. So treat others with respect, but you don't have to follow, and it's okay for you to be different. It's okay for you to be different. All right, how do I make my 11-year-old child be proud of herself as a Christian girl and daughter of God in this peer pressure in school? Again, I think the most important thing is it's okay to be different. If you are eating different food because it's a fasting time, if we are wearing a cross because we are Christian, unfortunately, or fortunately, it could be fortunately, as Christians, we're going to be persecuted for our beliefs. We know that all over the world. We do live in a free society, but just like I just said, we want other people to be respected. We want to be respected as well. So we should get our respect. And maybe this is an opportunity to teach somebody else, why am I eating different food for 50 days during Lent, right? Or during, any of the other fasts, during Advent, for example. So it's an opportunity to educate other people that may not understand. And now the world is diverse and open, and there's the internet. And so, we can teach rather than, just light a candle. The saying is, instead of cursing the dark, light a candle, right? So teach and educate people about who we are as Copts, and be proud of that fact. This is our nature, this is our culture, this is our religion, and we, of course, should be proud of it and educate people wherever you go about who you are, okay? So that's a good way to kind of teach those kinds of things. All right. How do we get rid of the phone and the iPad addiction? This is a huge one. It's so big that there's social media people that are meeting with Congress as we speak. Okay, so what's the alternative? What is the alternative? There's some Arabic here. I'm assuming it's the same thing. Okay, so the phone is a big thing, and we know it is impactful the younger the children start on it. I read something recently where they put an algorithm, put a pretend 13-year-old girl on one of the services, one of the social media services, and within, I believe, 5 minutes, She already had content about body image, about suicide, about all of these topics in under 5 minutes being on social media, all right? The longer that you can hold off on getting a phone, hold off, all right? Kids need to be learning critical thinking, need to be learning to solve problems, all of these things on their own. When you decide to get a phone, because I know it's not going to be if you decide to get a phone, it's when you decide to get a phone. Also put limitations on it. So my kids are 14, for example. I have 14-year-old twins. They do not have social media for the purpose of, I know what these algorithms do and that it pulls people in. So they're not ready at 14. They got phones a little bit younger than that, but they do not have any social media for that purpose, okay? So educate them. Again, it's all about education. Educate them on the dangers of social media, both from meeting strangers, but also that the images that you're seeing on social media are not real, okay? Everything that is put on social media is kind of like a sifted down perspective of everybody's highlights. Nobody puts that they failed a test, or nobody puts that they, got fired from their job. They put, oh, I got the best job in the world and now I'm CEO, right? Nobody's putting the negative stuff on there, which makes it look like everything is positive, and then you're comparing your life to this person's life, and it's not real, okay? They're only showing you the positive things. So my recommendation is hold off as best as you can. When you get the phone, put limitations on it so that you know what's on it, and you know how much time they're spending on it. It should shut off at a certain time at night so they can sleep, because it impacts sleep. And educate about the dangers of social media, spending hours and hours on the phone. Educate about this constantly. Without criticism, without anger, without the power struggle, just educate. That's a really important part of it. Because they want to connect with their friends, and this is going to be the way they do it. So just have limitations, have conversations. If you're going to go through their phone, make sure they're sitting with you so you're not invading privacy. I know you're paying for the phone, but again, you want to be respectful. So say the rule is I'm allowed to look through your phone anytime I want, but I'm going to do it when you're with me, okay? If we're going to go through it, we're going to go through it together. And again, things that they download should come through your phones first. I know that there's settings that you can do that. And replace it with other things too. Sports, church time, social time with friends, so it's not 24/7 on the phone. Single mother household with an 11-year-old, I think this says 11-year-old boy. I know how difficult that can be, so I would suggest you find supports. Physical support, mostly emotional support. Don't do this alone. There are people that are loving and willing to help in all capacities. Maybe help you make a meal, maybe take the kids off your hands for a little bit. Maybe somebody can drop them off at church for you and pick them up and bring them back home to you. Do not do it alone. You are not alone. And if you want to, whoever wrote this question, if you want to talk to me afterwards, I can give you some resources that can help with this in particular. So please do not do it alone. I know there's a lot of stigma about this issue. There should not be a lot of stigma. There should not be anybody that judges anyone in particular in a church. So please make this a hospital for the sick instead of a kind of museum for saints. We all have issues that we need to deal with. So whoever wrote this, please meet me afterwards. I can give you some resources. I love the drawing, or whoever did this. It's very cute. All right, thank you. That's the best question so far. All right, how can I help my daughter to make good friends? When I give my daughter space, as you said, she uses it wrong. What am I supposed to do? Great question. Friends come with time when two things, when you value yourself and when you know yourself. Because then you're not just connecting to whoever is like near you, like a magnet, okay? When you truly know who you are and your values and who you are, and again, that comes with time. Our brains are developing until 25, 26. They may not make good decisions when they're 11 or 12 about friends. Take it with grace, take it with gentleness, take it with patience, it will settle down. A lot of kids this age have struggles, I would say mostly in middle school and high school. And even elementary now I'm seeing it with bullying, which is why that's the next topic, with kids being mean to each other. And this is again that attempt to hold on to power. So instead of having power the correct way, that's why was part of this talk today, they're finding power in saying, I'm better, I'm smarter, I'm stronger, so we're going to shun the other people in that regard, okay? So it's really important that they know their values and know who to attract the right friends, not just connect to anybody just because this person wants to connect with me, okay? So if their values are not the same as you, that relationship is not going to work in the long term, okay? And monitor it. If they're connecting to other people that are not good, let's talk about that relationship. What do you see that is positive about that relationship? Is there anything that's positive? If you're noticing their language is bad, or they're hanging around the wrong crowd, or they're doing the wrong things, again, return it back to your values. These are not the values that we have. We speak respectfully, we speak, gently, we speak kindly, all of those different kinds of things. So know your values, and then you'll be able to make good friends. If you are stressed or feel sad and down as a parent, is it okay to share that with your kids? Is it good to say to them? And if you do wrong and get angry, do you teach your kids to have boundaries, or are they loving to everyone around them? Great, great questions. So from the sad perspective, they may notice that you are sad. You can speak about it at an age-appropriate level, all right? So if you're having, let's say, massive financial problems, all right, you wouldn't come and tell that to a 5-year-old who may get scared and not understand what financial problems are to begin with, all right? So you can say, I'm feeling sad, I'm just working through some things. That gives them permission to speak their own feelings when they're upset, okay? It gives them permission to speak about their own emotions and their own feelings when they're feeling those emotions. But you can speak about it at an age-appropriate level, not to scare them, not to, but it also fills in the holes, because usually if you don't tell them what's wrong, they're going to fill in the blanks on their own, okay? They're not going to know if it's a health problem or a house problem or a financial problem or a relationship problem or a work problem. They're going to fill in those holes a little bit. So speak about it, but at an age-appropriate level, and not necessarily in too much detail, all right? Just so they feel at ease about what is happening. So it is okay to share with your kid. I think it says here age 8 to 10. So share with them, but at an age-appropriate level. Not too much detail, not to scare them, not to put fear in them, but to give them some control back in learning about what's happening. It is absolutely okay to say you're sorry. In fact, it is important to say you're sorry for several reasons. You are not above making mistakes just because you're an adult. You're going to make mistakes. So when you do, model the correct behavior and say you're sorry, okay? And say how you're going to work through that issue for you yourself to improve in the future. So if you've lost control over a situation, I've apologized to my kids before. It's important. If you've misunderstood a situation, I've apologized for that before too. So understand it and explain it, and then apologize and move forward in the correct manner, all right? Again, you're not above making mistakes, so apologize when you do. It teaches them and models for them that everybody makes mistakes, and it's important to apologize. So if you expect them to apologize to their sibling or to you, it should be, again, mutual respect back and forth, okay? Obviously, as adults, we should be in more control than kids, and so try to minimize the moments where you've acted incorrectly, but you're going to act incorrectly at times because you're human, and you get tired, and you get frustrated, and you get overwhelmed, just like everybody else, and things happen. Apologize when you do. And then how do you teach your kids boundaries if they are loving everyone around them? Again, help them to know their values, help them to know, help them to know who they are as a person, and in that regard, that will help them to develop the correct friendships, all right? Again, we love and respect everyone, but that doesn't mean that I have to follow everyone, okay? I love and respect everyone, but I don't have to follow in the same behaviors or mannerisms as everyone. All right, if my 11-year-old boy gets angry and mad easily and cries most of the time to express himself. Okay, 11 years old. How can I correct him, make him stronger? Again, looking at strengths. So there's nothing wrong with crying. I mentioned this a few minutes ago. There's nothing wrong even with boys crying. I know there's a misconception out there that boys should not cry, but it's an emotion, and it's okay to show emotion. But in order to make anyone stronger, focus on strengths. Focus on helping them to identify their actual feeling. Again, usually with anger, there's other emotions underneath. So let's process that a little bit. Let's break this down a little bit. What is making you cry? What happened right before this that made you cry? Somebody made fun of you? Okay, that must have really hurt. Let's talk about it. Okay, that must have really hurt to hear this person say X, Y, and Z to you. But let's focus on your strengths. What are some of your strong points? And if we focus on that, then that helps them to identify the emotions a lot more clearly, and they can speak those emotions a lot more clearly, and then deal with the needs as part of those emotions. All right? Again, crying with anger usually means that there is something going on that I don't understand or that I feel is unjust, but I can't verbalize it. All right? So just like that wheel, help them to identify the actual emotion. That helps you to identify the actual need, and that makes you feel satisfied, right? It's like when you are craving something in particular, it's very different than just eating anything at all. This is the same kind of idea. You want to tackle the exact emotion and the need that goes with it. Okay. Kids fighting, what should I do to solve the problem? Help them to communicate. So specifically if it's siblings, for example, unless somebody is getting super mean and super out of control, and unless it's becoming like a physical fight or something like that, try to let them work it out themselves. Teach them proper communication skills. You say what you're feeling, you say what you're feeling, and then come up with a resolution, all right? Believe it or not, these sibling squabbles that happen are teaching people how to communicate and resolve conflict. And there's an art to that. There's an art to resolving conflict, which means, again, identifying my need in this situation, and then how do I relay that need to another person assertively, not aggressively, assertively, in order to get my need met back towards me, all right? So the point here is to teach assertiveness, which is firm and yet respectful communication. All right? So you can't put people down. You can't make fun of their clothing or their hairstyle in an attempt to resolve a conflict. This is what like children do sometimes, right? It's more about helping them to resolve the conflict by understanding this is my need and this is the other person's need. Where do we meet in the middle? All right? Like kids sometimes, for example, will fight over clothes, let's say. All right, I want to wear that. No, I want to wear this. No, I want to wear this. All right, let's resolve this. First of all, does it fit the other person? Okay, if it's no, then obviously you can't wear it. If it fits both children and their siblings fighting over it, then you wear it today and you wear it tomorrow. The conflict is resolved, right? So finding a solution is really important and kind of troubleshooting that problem. Unfortunately, this one is in Arabic. If anyone wants to help me, that would be great.
I have twin daughters.
So
One was one with a stronger personality than the other, and the other one just accepts anything. How do we keep them kind of like so one doesn't step on the other?
Good question. I also have twin girls, so I understand a little bit about that from a personal perspective as well as professional psychological. I don't know if they're identical or if they're fraternal. Identical twins have identical genetic material, so they're a lot more similar than we realize. But even fraternal twins, mine are fraternal twins, they may have some similarities that overlap, but not necessarily. They're more like regular siblings. I would say initially to answer this question is that everybody has strengths, all right? So even the weaker, and I don't like that word, but just to use it here, has strengths that we have to identify. And the more that we build on strengths, the more likely to identify ways to grow in the things that they're as strong in, okay? And for the stronger of the two, it could be that they are actually stronger, or that they have a persona on that is covering up something that they don't want to necessarily show or bring out. But for both of them, there are measures that you can take. Again, if you reach out to me afterwards, there are measures that you can take that can help you identify strengths, and then you use these strengths to help build these children stronger and stronger, regardless of where they appear strong or weak. Again, I don't like the word weak, because I think that everybody has strengths that we can follow. Okay? Yes?
I know that consistency is like a key for many stuff. So if you, for example, notice a problem with my kids, or I want to do something, I try to sit with them. If they are resistant, I try to become like consistent every day, create routines and stuff like that, until we feel like I'm almost there and we're reaching it. And then we get tired. We're human beings. Like, we sometimes have lack of time or bored, or we need some time for ourselves. So I feel like after we feel like I'm reaching it, we return all back, you know. So because we sometimes drop the rules that we created or things like that, just to feel like a little bit like relaxed, you know. So like, what are the tips that we can do when we do that, so we don't feel this, like as if we lost everything again and start all over all the time, and how we can create time for us not to be like consistent, because we sometimes struggle with our own consistency in our own life, you know, like nobody's always like at the same point, you know. So
Great question about consistency and how we should be consistent, but at times we are human, and obviously we can't be consistent all the time. So I would say in those times it's important about quality more than quantity. So even if you're spending 20 minutes in that day with your child because you had a long day at work, for example, make that 20 minutes count. It's about consistency in the quality of what you're providing, not just the time per se. So not every day you're going to be able to spend hours on end in teaching and structure and everything. You implement the rules as much as you can, but it's also more important to have that quality, to keep describing the values and the things behind what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing. In that, the messages will kind of seep in a little bit more, as opposed to, I have to do this every single day. I have to teach the same things every day for an hour every day. Of course, that's not practical. We have to be practical first and foremost, but it's also about the quality of what we're doing. That's what's really significant. Yeah. So let your quality be consistent. Yeah. Great questions, everyone. Any other questions before part 2 later on? Okay. Trips to treat jealousy between sisters. Yes, that rivalry is going to be there again between siblings, because everybody is trying to gain the parents' attention in some way, right? And that's just kind of personality theory and developmental theory. But again, if we focus on the strengths of the individual person and treat them in a unique way, that will often help deal with the jealousy, because I see your strengths and I see your strengths, right? So I could tell you from my, they have different talents, and I encourage each of their individual talents. If someone wants to buy this that will help her with her talent, I go and buy it. If this one needs art classes, she gets art classes. One of them, for example, is an amazing artist, but the other one's not an artist. She does other things. She builds and she, crochets and does all these other great things. So build their individual talent. You don't have to be like your sister. You're not going to be like your sister. You are a unique individual. God made you unique. Let's build on your talents and your strengths rather than trying to make you equal carbon copies of each other, okay? Because even with twins, mine are twins, like I said, they are quite different. And even if they're identical twins, they're quite different, okay? So nurture their specific talents. It will help curb the jealousy, because now you're focusing on their specific, again, that verse of you are seen, the God that sees, all right? So see them specifically. That's what really builds people up. Other questions? And I think there will be opportunity for questions after the next part as well. So if you come up with a question later. Just for those QR codes, the green one goes directly to my business WhatsApp. So you can text me through my business line. The one on the right goes to my website. Website is being rebuilt as we speak, so it's still, it's been up for several years, but it's being rebuilt as we speak, so it'll look even nicer in a few months or so. All right, so the right one is my website. You can reach me that way. The left one is my WhatsApp business line. You can connect with me that way as well. Thank you. Whatever you all want. I'm here for you all today. Whatever you all want. Half an hour, it's about 1 now, 1:30? Yeah.
We'll take a 30-minute, we'll come back at 1:30. So it's 1:05 يعني 25 minutes. نتقابل على الساعة 1:30 نكمل ال part 2. Thank you.
Thank you. you all hear me? All right, welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a good break. Are the screens up? No? Oh, I'm not sure. So this one's not working? It's been out? Okay. Sorry. All right, we're going to cover a very specific topic now. We know we talked on the last session about just generally what kids' needs are and how kids can grow and improve and what they need to grow and improve. In this session, we're going to specifically talk about bullying. I was asked to address this topic since it's a topic that's kind of big in our schools and unfortunately even in our churches sometimes. So we're going to be covering bullying in this section. And as always, that QR code can direct you to my website, and then at the end will be the WhatsApp that you can look at as well. All right, so again, we talked about God's promises in the last session to give us a hope, to give us a future, to help us to prosper and those things. So one of the ways that we can do that is to understand more about bullying. And bullying, again, can occur at any place. We can't just say it's church, and so therefore there's no bullying at church. Unfortunately, there is bullying that occurs in churches. It occurs in sports. It occurs in extracurriculars. It occurs in school, of course. And there's always been a big push in our schools to kind of educate kids on bullying and what that does and the damage that it causes. So there are different kinds of bullying that we're going to be covering today, and hopefully this will help us to understand why kids do this. Again, the perspective is that we're going to look at is from an entire biopsychosocial perspective. And so again, biologically, kids are developing a lot in this age group. Any child is developing quite rapidly, even into high school. Biologically, there's a lot of changes that are happening, hormones, things like that. Psychologically, it's also based on how they think and how they act and how they behave. And also, we don't know exactly what's going on in their lives socially, and there's also an impact from their spiritual perspective as well. So again, like in the last section, we talked about some of the most common stressors that adolescents face. They face things in their self-esteem. They face body image and appearance type issues. Puberty, the age for puberty is about age 11 for girls, the average age, but as young as 8, believe it or not. So you may see some of these behaviors even at younger ages. Up to age 13 for boys is the average for puberty. Again, academic stresses, mental health concerns, relationships, peer pressure, which we'll also talk about a little bit today, substance use, even cyber addictions, which was alluded to in the questions. But the one we're going to focus on the most in terms of stressors, we can spend and have entire lectures on each of these topics, but we're going to be talking about bullying most of all today. Again, to identify when your child is having a stressful interaction, you can look at the body, the mind, the behavior, and the emotions. Anything physical that is not medically kind of identified. It could be something that is an indication that there is something wrong and something difficult going on. Things like headaches, rashes, stomach issues, fatigue, excessive fatigue, not wanting to go to school. They wanted to sleeping in too much, worrying a lot, avoiding certain spaces that they don't want to go to and you want them to go, like school or church. Things like losing their appetite, all kinds of things, losing confidence. These are all signs that things could be going on that are wrong. It's important to know that when kids go through these stresses, specifically stresses like bullying, and somebody's consistently attacking them in some way, it distorts messages in their mind that they're not worthy, that they're not good enough, that they're alone, that they're shameful. And these messages may appear perfectly fine on the outside, right? They may look okay, they may engage in all kinds of behavior still and go to school and go to sports. But on the inside, they could feel, just like that picture up there, kind of very broken and sad on the inside. So just because they appear okay on the outside, look for more than one sign that there could be something that's wrong, that's important as well. It's really important to know that when kids are distressed, it's different than sin. It is not the same as sin. Now, sin could be causing the distress, but not every mental illness or mental wellness or stress or something like that is a sin. And I say that because oftentimes I will hear parents say, if you just pray a little bit harder, you won't feel depressed, or you won't feel anxious, or you won't be bullied, or any of these things. And these messages are not good, because then you're not actually taking care of the problem, right? The Bible tells us if you tell somebody to be filled and hungry and you're not doing anything to help them, you really haven't done anything. It has to be faith and works together. So it is separate from sin. Yes, sin can cause mental distress, but it is not equal with sin. All right, so I need to make that very clear as well. It is not a lack of faith. It is not a weakness when they're stressed, and it is not a separation from God necessarily. Sometimes it is. Sometimes they're connected, but not every time. And the other important thing is, it is not something that if they develop this sadness or depression, it is not something that they can just snap out of, okay? Just go be happier, or just put on a smile and everything will be okay. Clinically, these things are very strong and need support from a professional to help with these symptoms, okay? So it's not just something that they can snap out of or do on their own. One of the ways that you can tell that bullying or any other mental health issue is causing a problem and when you need to get some help, because everybody gets depressed and anxious from time to time. And it's a matter of learning when it's serious enough to get help and when it's something that is kind of an everyday kind of, regular depression that you can't snap out of. So usually some of the signs you can see in these kids that there's trouble brewing is there's a change in their feelings. They've lost interest in things that they were once interested in, let's say a sport, or they used to come to church and now they don't want to come to church anymore. If they have a change in their sleeping habits, being awake too much, sleeping only a few hours a night, or sleeping too much. So most kids need around, I would say about 10 hours of sleep a night. And if they're only doing 2 to 3 hours a night consistently, every once in a while, 1 day or 2 days here, that's okay. But if it's consistently they're not sleeping, or they're sleeping 12, 15 hours a day, then there could be something that we need to check out here, what's going on. If they have low energy, if they have difficulty interacting with other people, if they have appetite or weight changes, again, eating too much or eating too little, these are all signs that there's something that is going on. If their emotions are uncontrollable, these are also signs that something could be going on. The other issue is how do we know when we need to get help? In some of the work that I do, we help people in all ends of the spectrum, all right? In some agencies I've worked in, we really work with individuals that are unwell. Some people are coming in and getting help even when they're healthy. They just want some coping mechanisms to learn more about their emotions, to learn how to deal with problems. So anybody at any time, it's good for them to get help, okay? These are just kind of foundational questions before we get to the bullying aspect, but anybody at any time, it is okay to get help. I want to make that clear, whether you're completely unwell and unraveled or whether you are really doing well but need some extra support. All of those and everything in between is a place and a time that you can get help. So there's no shame, there's nothing wrong with getting help. It is a good thing to get help. Come and talk to somebody, and if it's, we can get you resources and things like that. So let's talk about the specific kind of bullying. And this is an important topic because, again, even adults get bullied, even adults get harassed and have difficult situations at work, let's say, even amongst their peers. So it's even more difficult when it's kids, because with kids, it's something that we want to give them the vocabulary, give them the strength, give them the empowerment of how to deal with these situations, all right? So sometimes kids, play around with each other and say mean things, and obviously that is wrong. But bullying is very specific in its definition. It is something that is repeatedly negative in action that is meant on purpose to hurt another person, okay? So it has to be repeated in order for it to be labeled bullying. It has to be something that is repeated, because I know this is a word that is thrown around a lot, right? So it has to be something that is repeated. It is a negative action, and it is purposely meant to hurt another person. Intentional, okay? I didn't do it just by accident or because I was having a bad day and I said something mean. Yes, that is a bullying tactic, but bullying itself is intentional and repeated, okay? So obviously if somebody's saying something mean to another child, we should intervene and tell them to not do that and redirect them in the correct way. But this is intentional and repeated. The third ingredient that is needed here is that the person that is being bullied is unable to defend themselves, okay? And that's usually because there is an imbalance of power. Imbalance of power meaning one child is older, bullying a child who's younger, one from a higher socioeconomic status to someone who's lower socioeconomic status, someone who's physically bigger against a smaller child, many children against one, and against social status. I'm more popular, I'm seen as more cool, and I'm gonna bully and attack this other person, okay? So again, this happens with adults, this happens in job situations, this happens in churches, all right? We're not immune because we're in a church. It happens in schools, sports, all kinds of things. Different kinds of bullying. Most of us are very familiar, and we're gonna talk about each of these specifically, but most of us are very familiar with verbal bullying, but there are other kinds. There's nonverbal relationship bullying, there's cyberbullying, obviously that one's pretty dangerous, and there's verbal bullying. So we're gonna talk about each of these as well. So again, from the research, a person that is being bullied is when he or she is repeatedly exposed over time to negative actions on the part of one person or another, and these intentional acts are meant to harm, and they are repeated. And again, there's an imbalance of power somewhere. So let's start talking first about physical bullying. That's probably the one we're all familiar with, all right? Hitting, kicking, shoving, biting, spitting, destroying someone else's property. It doesn't have to be physically against my body, but it can be physically against someone's property. I've had clients where they'll complain that other kids in their class will tear up their notebooks, tear up their books, break their pencils. That is still considered bullying, even though it's not physically touching them. Even making faces and gestures at somebody, again, repeatedly, intentionally, and meant to harm. So that is your physical bullying. Verbal bullying, on the other hand, is more, again, verbal, right? So name calling, putting somebody down, teasing them in a harmful way, making jokes that are painful, making fun of somebody's culture or religion or their clothing, insulting them, mocking them, even intimidating them or mocking them by like dressing like them or something like that. If you're saying hurtful things or unkind things to somebody, then you are also bullying them. Again, the intention here is to harm or to put down. We then have relationship bullying. For some reason, this one is more common in girls than in boys, and girls are more likely to be the victims of this one. This is where you're pressuring someone to do something against their will. We'll talk about peer pressure a little bit today. Writing or passing rude notes to this person. Silent treatment is a form of relationship bullying because you are withdrawing your love and affection from that person for an extended period of time without explanation or reason. Talking about someone behind their back is a form of verbal bullying, or nonverbal bullying, I'm sorry. Spreading rumors about someone is this form of bullying. Preventing someone from making friends, so isolating someone from your peer group who's trying to be in your peer group is also a form of this bullying. Or telling lies. Like I said, this one is much more common in girls, and girls are much more the victims of this one. And then there is cyberbullying, all right? The reason this one is so scary is because it can happen at all hours of the day, even in the middle of the night, even when you as parents are sleeping, there could be cyberbullying going on. This is aggressive messages or hurtful messages or emails, any kind of electronic type message. They become the victims of gossip or rumors, and it spreads like wildfire on social media. People making mean messages about someone, threatening someone online, spreading embarrassing photos. So with your kids, again, be very careful that any picture that anyone takes can end up at any place at any time. And even if you don't post it, it can be spreading like wildfire. Even if you post it and then take it down, it can still spread like wildfire. Somebody could have screenshot it, somebody could send it to a million other people all in a matter of seconds. So cyberbullying is real and very scary in that regard. People have often felt that they are targeted by cyberbullying at some point or another. There have been studies that were done kind of early on in the internet days in the early 2000s, where they found that the number in just 5 years doubled just between 2001 and 2006 of terms of cyberbullying between ages 10 to 17. So kids as young as 10 and even younger now, with the advent of social media and the prevalence of it, are being cyberbullied. And again, it is dangerous because it can occur 24/7 without being in the watchful eye of parents or teachers or caregivers or any of these things. All right, just to give you some kind of education on cyberbullying, let's talk about some specific things that are happening online. Some of this research is a little bit older, but the message here is still the same. And it's even probably worse because of social media and how fast things can rapidly spread through social media. So the actual definition, I'm going to just read it word for word here, of cyberbullying is being cruel to others by sending or posting harmful material or engaging in other forms of social aggression using the internet or other digital technologies, okay? And again, now what are kids doing? They're on Snapchat, they're sending group messages to people. One picture, one message, one entity can spread to an entire group in a very short amount of time. So what are some forms of cyberbullying? The first one here is called flaming. This is where you're using online electronic messages with kind of vulgar or angry language and spreading that on the internet. Harassment is repeatedly sending mean or nasty messages or insulting messages. Another one could be about posting gossip or rumors and damaging reputations or friendships. Denigration is that one. Another dangerous one is that people can impersonate other people online. So they can take your identity, they can pretend, they could take a peer's phone, for example, somehow get into that phone and start posting messages from their phone and pretending that they're that person, which obviously that can ruin relationships, it can ruin friendships, it can spread rumors, and it can create a lot of damage. Outing somebody means that you know somebody has a secret and you go online and spread that secret or spread a rumor about that person online without their permission, okay? It could be something going on in their in their family. It could be going on something, in their lives, and somebody chooses to take that information and use it in a harmful way. Again, you can reveal someone's secrets or embarrassing information. You can exclude people from your group, or you can cyber stalk somebody by going on their websites, knowing where they are, and those kinds of behaviors. The issue here is that people bully because they feel empowered to do so. Sometimes there's no consequences. Sometimes they think it's fun or acceptable behavior, or they think that this is the way to gain friends. If I make fun of you, I will gain more friends that way, and everybody will laugh at this other person. They may feel that they are not going to get in trouble for bullying. Majority, if not all of schools, through their Board of Education, usually have anti-bullying policies, and those are often reinforced through the school board and through things like that. I'm not sure what churches are doing in this regard, but there usually are consequences in school, and in some cases it can even be illegal with legal consequences. So be aware if you are bullying. They may feel that it is acceptable and it's an acceptable way to deal with differences. They may think it's the way to deal with conflicts with their peers, or that they can make things exciting. They may do it to gain power over their peers, and they may bully in order to deal with the fact that they were also bullied themselves. So a large percentage of people have been bullied themselves, and so they end up bullying other people. They may do it to feel tough or show their confidence and they're in charge, or to get some sort of attention, or they may have been exposed to bullying themselves. So they may not understand the consequences, and it's up to us to kind of educate them that, again, there are laws and at least policies within the school system meant to prevent this. Okay, so what does a bully look like? Of course, the bully is not going to wear a sign, like a badge of some sort that says, hey, I'm a bully, and I'm coming to attack you or harass you. So if that's the case, then they can literally be in any environment. They can be in our schools, they can be in our churches, they can be even, bullying siblings, unfortunately. It can be in every environment, and it's not just because you're in a church that you're automatically protected from bullies and there's no bullies here, all right? So let's do some interactive stuff here together for a second. Some facts and myths about bullying. Is bullying a part of life and it's normal? What do you all think? Myth or fact? What do you all think? Just shout out answers. Myth, right. Bullying is wrong at all stages. It's not just a part of growing up. That's what we used to think it is, or people would often use that as a kind of a myth. Of course it's a myth, but people used to think that this is just a part of growing up. You're going to be, hazed at school, or people are going to make fun of you, and it's a part of the growing up process. No, this is not something that we should ever perpetuate or say that it is okay just because somebody is in school and they're growing up, it means that they can be bullied. It is absolutely wrong. All right, bullying is a new phenomenon. I put that up too soon, but that is definitely a myth. We see even from the Old Testament, Joseph was bullied by his brothers. All right, perfect example of bullying. Everything that is happening nowadays, we can see examples of it in the Bible, right? So Joseph was bullied by his brothers. They threw him in a pit. They sold him to another country. But he overcame all that, went through a lot of struggles, eventually to become the second command in Egypt. So it's important to tell our kids if they're being bullied, they're not alone. Maybe give them the story of Joseph being bullied by his brothers, but also to know that, it is not okay to be bullied and that you should always speak up and talk about these situations. All right, myth or fact, boys are more bullied than girls? What do you think? Myth or fact? Myth, okay? It's actually a myth because girls and boys are both bullied, just maybe in different ways. So they're bullied the exact same amount. For boys, it's more the physical bullying, okay? Fighting with each other, hitting each other, punching each other, again, all wrong, and the destruction of property. So we will often see that a lot, like I said, kids tearing up each other's notebooks or books or pencils. And for girls, it is the more relational kind of bullying. I'm going to exclude you from my friend group, gossiping and whispering about other people, right? And that is extremely hurtful as well because rumors spread, reputations are ruined, and you're excluding from the friend group and you come home crying to your parents. This person is no longer my friend. And I've seen extreme damage in this area, even when it's not the physical bullying, that people remember it decades later that somebody excluded them from a friend group or made fun of them or laughed about their weight or fill in the blank. Lots of different things here. All right? But the pain is equal. So the physical bullying is painful and the emotional pain of relationships are painful as well. All right. Bullying and conflict is the same. Myth or fact? Myth, right. Because bullying, again, is meant to be intentional, intentionally causing someone harm repeatedly, and it's intentional, and there's a power differential there. So again, bullying and aggressive behavior, there's an imbalance of power. It's okay to have conflict. In fact, we want to teach kids how to have conflict correctly. Because again, you're going to have conflict at work one day. You're going to have college roommate conflicts one day. You have to learn how to resolve those things. But you should never be mean or disrespectful or demean someone or put them down. All right. How about this one? True, myth or fact? Bullies exist in my neighborhood and the places that I visit, including churches, schools, whatever. All right, that one is a fact, right? Bullying is in all locations, even churches, in schools, at camps, at all of these places, bullying can exist. I did nothing wrong and I do not deserve to be bullied. Your kids may come and tell you this. Of course, that is a fact. Nobody deserves to be bullied, and no, bullies should be bullying anybody in this regard. All right, how about this one? This one's a little bit tricky. I should just stand up to the bully and they will stop. What do you think? This one is tricky. It's actually both. On the one hand, you can stand up to them in the correct way, meaning tell an adult, tell a priest, tell somebody who can help get you out of that situation. Again, in most Board of Educations, there is policies against bullying, all right? Maybe there should be policies in every place against harassment and bullying, but the way to stand up to them is not maybe to fight back physically or to fight back verbally, but to stand up for your rights from a legal or an academic kind of perspective as well. So do not try to fight it on your own, especially if it's someone who is bigger and stronger. So, telling kids to punch the other kid back, now they're both going to be in trouble. They're both going to be suspended. But definitely stand up for yourself. Go tell the principal, go tell the school board, go tell someone like that. All right. Believe it or not, in any kind of bullying situation, there are 3 types of people in that situation, all right? There is the bully, that's the person that is doing the bullying. Then there is the person that is targeted, that's why he has a target on his back. And then there are the bystanders, all right? And at the very least, all of us have been a bystander at some point. We may have been any one of these 3 at one point. So let's talk about each of these characteristics. The bully's intention is to harm. They're not just going through a bad day and slipped and said something mean, all right? The bully's purpose and intention is to harm. It is not an accident. It is done on purpose. They don't really have a motive in mind except maybe to gain some power and maybe to gain power over somebody that is weaker. So that's their entire intention. I want to be the leader of this group, the leader of this pack, so I'm going to put other people down so that I can feel good about myself, okay? And so in this case, there's somebody that is targeted, and this person that is targeted is never to blame themselves, okay? The target can be a boy or a girl. They may feel like they're not strong enough in their social group. They may feel that they're the weaker of the, in terms of grades. They may feel they don't have enough money in their family, so they're being targeted and people are making fun of them based on their clothes or their shoes or whatever it is. And as a result, there is a strong consequence that happens out of this. They start avoiding the places that they would normally go. They'll avoid school, they'll avoid specific classes in school, they'll avoid church, they'll avoid anywhere where this bully might be. And then we have the bystander, okay? This is the person that also, believe it or not, has power, all right? Because if they see this, if you see something, say something. I know the saying is cliche and we've all heard it, but truly the bystander has the ability to do something. The bystander should go tell an adult, should go tell someone who can control this situation. Go tell the principal, go tell a counselor, go tell these things. Because the issue becomes, again, there are consequences for people that ignore the bullying, all right? People skip school and the church activities. The kid that is being bullied, their grades will drop, they'll become depressed, they'll have low self-esteem, they may have mental health or physical health problems. And the bully, if it's not controlled when it's still kind of on the lower scale of things, there could be legal action for this bully, okay, if they attack other people and things like that. So how do we help kids not to bully? This is going to be really, really important. The first thing is not to judge, okay? Not to judge other kids because they look different, act different, have different principles, have different culture, have different whatever, okay? Because we don't know that other person's perspective, all right? I was shown a video once when I was in graduate school, and it was a really powerful video from this perspective, and I always bring it up when we talk about judgment. So there's a concept in psychology called the fundamental attribution error, which means we usually judge other people and say that their behavior and their actions are based on their personality, okay? Whereas when we judge ourselves, we base it on circumstance, okay? So the video that we were shown, it was a small clip in graduate school, but it has always stayed with me. There is a woman, and she's driving erratically through a parking lot, parks her car very suddenly, and runs into a building. When she runs into the building, she pushes people aside and runs through them, okay? What would you say about this woman if you saw this scene? Driving erratically in a parking lot, stopping suddenly, running in a building, and running through everybody and pushing everybody out of the way. What would you say? I'm sorry? Okay, she's rushing to get her kid. Anybody else? Yeah? Okay. Anybody else? Imagine watching this video. What would you think about this woman? Yeah, there's something wrong with her, right? What's wrong with this person? This is crazy. Who would do this? Who would drive through a parking erratically, possibly mowing down some people? And then the professor rewinded the clip a little bit, a few minutes before that, and plays the video about maybe a minute before that, okay? A minute before that, she's sitting at a table having lunch with her friends, and she gets a phone call. Answers the phone. The person on the other side is saying, something, and she says, yes, that's my daughter. Her name is Holly. And she what? She fainted? Okay, I'll go come pick her up right away. Now, if you had gotten that phone call, my child fainted, wouldn't you rush to go figure out what's happening with them and go get them? But immediately we judged her when she's driving erratically through a parking lot and jumping into a building and pushing people out of the way, all right? So the moral of this story is this is what kids are doing when they're bullying another kid. They see the kid that is weaker, they see the kid that isn't dressed as nicely, they see the kid that is hungry, and they make fun of them instead of saying, how can I help this person? So our ultimate lesson to our kids is to promote some tolerance and to not judge others. We don't know where this kid's coming from, what their differences are, what their makeup are, what's going on here, what's their home life like, how did they grow up, what is happening in their home life, and they judge, all right? So we need to be able to react in a certain way, whether we are the bully or the bystander or the kid that is the target. So the first thing we're going to teach them is not to judge. Obviously, that is something that is written in the Bible, that is discussed extensively, and that we should be learning about as well. Okay. Obviously, one way to kind of promote tolerance is every culture has the same thing called the golden rule. In our Bible, it is in Matthew 7:12, to treat others as we want to be treated, right? And so if you have somebody that you see that is different than you, help them to promote understanding of that person, not just judging them or treating them poorly simply because we don't understand them, all right? So for the bully, these are all signs of a bully, right? Has anyone ever given someone else a dirty look or rolled their eyes at someone? Have you physically hurt someone or made them cry? Have you ever tried to scare someone? Have you ever tried to criticize someone until they felt broken or hurt? Did you destroy anyone's property or threaten anyone? Did you ever spread any rumors? Have you whispered a secret about someone behind someone's back? These are all forms of bullying. And so if your kid has done any of these, believe it or not, they have bullied someone, all right? But even if they have bullied someone, it is important to know that it's never too late, okay? You can tell them to go talk it out with a teacher or an abuna or a servant, to go say, I'm sorry to this kid that they hurt, and find healthier ways to deal with your emotions. Okay, you want to feel powerful? The way to feel powerful is to be inclusive of others, not to push anyone aside. So bullying is something that can be really damaging, like I said, and it can pull somebody in the wrong direction for a long time. So we need to find healthier ways to deal with our emotion. For the person that is being bullied, for the person that is targeted in this situation, the first thing that usually happens is their self-esteem may drop. Their self-esteem may plummet, okay? And that may become something that's really difficult as well. So we want the bullied person to become more assertive, okay? We want the bullied person to become more assertive, to stand up for themselves, but not in an aggressive manner, okay? In a more kind of gentle approach to things, right? A more respectful but firm kind of way. The other thing that people that are bullied often do is they'll take the blame on themselves. Well, if only I had better shoes or a better bag or a better whatever, then I'm not going to be bullied, all right? Nobody should be bullying you simply because of your socioeconomic status or your bag or your grades or your spirituality or whatever people are bullying you for, okay? So nobody should be bullying anyone. They should talk to someone that they trust. They should pursue interests that they love because that will help them to find meaning and purpose in their lives. Tell adults, especially if it's cyberbullying, okay? Believe it or not, there are entire police units that are out there dealing with things that are happening on the internet and on social media, all right? We actually had the police give 2 talks at my kids' district, the entire district this year, to talk about cyberbullying and other things that I will not mention here that I'm sure you can figure out that are happening online, okay? So there are entire units of police departments that are working just on the cyber aspect of bullying, of harassment, of, children things that should not be happening. So be aware of that. And most importantly, tell your children to not let the mean kind of absorb in their mind, all right? I cannot control what other people say or do. I can control how I think about it and how I act about it as a result, all right? So I don't have to let their mean negative words impact me. It doesn't have to hurt me. I know who I am. I'm a child of God. I have purpose. I have meaning. I have something that I can accomplish. So that's really important as well. And then for the bystander, this is scary. I know that it is scary. But they have a responsibility, and most people can turn somebody in anonymously. All right, so you can go to a principal, you can go to your counselor at school and say, I saw so-and-so bullying so-and-so, and this person broke down in tears and ran off to the bathroom. All right, and they can go anonymously and tell the principal. All right, their name will not be told, they will not be removed or, they will not be found out. And it has benefits, all right? It makes you feel less kind of guilt in this, and it makes you feel like you've accomplished something. It makes you feel like you're contributing something to this person's life. There's a famous quote from Gandhi that says, be the change you want to see in the world. So if you help to create this change, you can do a small thing and have it result in something really big. All right, let's talk about peer pressure. And we'll talk about where peer pressure kind of comes from and how we've studied this from a psychological perspective. But peer pressure is pressure put on someone to think in a manner that is similar to this dominant person, even if I don't want to. All right, so here, why don't you try this? Or we're doing this, this is cool. That is peer pressure, all right? It's influence from a person or a group to another person, influencing that it can occur even without the person realizing. I just want to get the coolest new, shoe or the coolest new outfit or whatever. But it's also important for us to remember and to tell kids that they're learning from you as much as you're learning from them. So you can be a positive influence instead of a negative one. All right, now let's look at some research of why there are peer pressure. This was a study done all the way back in 1951, all right, 73 years ago, long time ago. And it's a famous study in the field of psychology about why people conform, okay? So this researcher called Solomon Asch would show people this line on the left, all right, and tell them you're going to have to match it to the lines on the right, all right? He would bring in a room of 5 people. One of those people was the person he was studying, and the other 4 people were told to purposely lie, okay? To lie on purpose. So they would see the line on the left, and the 4 people that were told to purposely lie would say the answer is C. I hope you can all see that the answer is not C, okay? Then the 5th person that he's studying, he would go down the line. All right, which one is it? They would say C, 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 C. By the time you get to the last person who he's studying, who just saw all the people in this line say C, they're confused. You can tell from their body language that they're confused. Why are these people saying C? It's clearly A, okay? But because he doesn't want to stand out and appear funny, he also says C, okay? So this was the first study, all the way back in 1951, we knew that people conform to the other people around them because they don't want to stand out, okay? So then he did the study a different way, all right? He said all the people, yes, continue to lie, all right? But then he put a 6th person at the end, put the new person at the end, and put a 5th person right here that said the correct answer. So you had C, 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 C. The person number 5 said A. The last person who he's studying now feels better. Now I have a friend. I have a partner. I don't know this person, but they're saying the correct answer. So when they say A, now you say the correct answer, okay? Which is A. So now we know that if you have a buddy, you are more likely to do the right thing. You're not going to conform with the peer pressure. So always have a good friend with you with similar values. They reinforce each other, all right? In the final study, so he did 3 studies. In the final study, he had all the people say their incorrect answer, C, but the 5th person, he told them, write down your answer, okay? Write down your answer. He was more likely at that point to say the correct answer, A, because he wasn't saying his answer out loud in order to be ridiculed, right? Which means if we are doing things in private, we are more likely to do them correctly, in my own mind, rather than appear incorrect in front of other people. So this was a fascinating, famous study in psychology, the conformity study, that told us why we fall into peer pressure, okay? And again, adults are susceptible to it. Adults could say, you know, so-and-so got a bigger house, so-and-so got a better car, so-and-so has a better bag. I have to follow them and follow that peer pressure. So that becomes problematic as well. All right. Kids fall into peer pressure because they worry others will make fun of them. They're curious to try new things. They want to fit in. Here are some of the things that they will fall into peer pressure with: fashion choices, drug, alcohol, vaping, decisions about relationships, especially in middle school. Apparently kids are now dating in middle school. I know it's a scary thought. Decisions to have a relationship, what to do in those relationships, who the choices of their friends are, academic pressures, all right? Whether you're doing really well or really bad. So that's important to consider as well. One way to teach kids is to give them, you know, self-control, tell them to stop, think, and then do, because some of the things that they do in these peer pressure moments have long-term consequences. Health consequences, legal consequences. If you post something, it never disappears, all right? Even if you take it down, there's still some traces of it somewhere on the internet. So have the self-control, stop and think before you do anything. There's a great book by Peter Benson that's called What Teens Need in Order to Succeed. This is hard to see, but there's 25 alternatives that he gives kids to do instead of fall into peer pressure, all right? So you can look up that book. It's really great. And this is a lovely, lovely quote: wrong is wrong, even if everyone is doing it, and right is right, even if no one is doing it, all right? So be the unique person, stand up for what is correct and right, not just fall into peer pressure. It's important for them to know their self-worth, because if they're very confident in who they are, they're not going to fall susceptible to peer pressure. You should encourage their interests. That purpose is really important. Remember that when you empower them and they have knowledge about who they are, they're able to overcome peer pressure. Not only are they able to overcome it, but they're able to aspire to positive peer pressure, all right? So they can be the ones that are influencing, not the ones that are being influenced, All right, again, having that buddy system like that study from the 1950s. Again, that's a very famous study that showed us about conformity. But when you had that buddy in that study, you were more likely to answer correctly and not just conform to the peer pressure. All right? Just real briefly here in the interest of time, but these are the actual qualities of a good friend. They're sacrificial. They're accepting you unconditionally. You can trust them completely. They don't envy, but they support you instead. One of my favorite verses in the Bible is that all things are lawful, but not all things edify. So friends edify and build and encourage each other. They're loyal. They help you with accountability. And they forgive one another and share in each other's joys. The other thing that we should know is our character strengths. I kind of alluded to this in the last lecture, but we all have strengths. There's a quiz on here that you can take for free at the viacharacter.org that will help you to identify your strengths. And one of the things that I do in the work that I do in my consultations and the work that I do is help people to build these strengths. So research tells us that all 8 billion of us on the planet have all 24 of these strengths, okay? But they are in a different whoever's my highest is not the same as your highest. So they're in a different combination in every person. But every person has these strengths in them. And the more that we lean on them and use them, the more we cultivate resilience, the more we grow, and the more that we build certain things in our life. It's also important to tell kids that even when you're going through a difficult time, you are resilient. You have shown resilience in the past. Maybe use examples of past times that they were resilient and help them to cultivate resilience in their current life. And as I showed you in the last section, that expressing gratitude helps us to be more resilient. Knowing our strengths helps us to be more resilient. Savoring our good experiences helps us to be more resilient. And knowing what our story of resilience is and applying it and applying kindness all helps us to be resilient. And finally, we want to help to train our kids through every aspect of their life. Before they go through a problem, before they are bullied, before they are peer pressured, we want to prevent them with examples of how to handle certain things, educate them about how to handle if they're being bullied, how not to become the bully, how to be if they're the bystander, what to do. So giving them examples. When they're in the middle of a struggle, we need to give them examples and train them by love, all right? Not to beat down on them when they're already going through a hard time, or I told you so, or all these difficult things. And then finally, after the crisis is over and they've learned a lesson or two, then you train them by hope. Hope for a good future, hope for a better future, and for all of those things. Again, bullying can lead to brokenness, but we're not broken. And again, this is called kintsugi. It's a lovely thing. All right. Any questions? Thank you. Okay, this is a question about a 6-year-old daughter who's afraid of loud sounds, washer and dryers, things like that. This one I might want to answer a little bit in more detail privately, so if you want to come up afterwards, I can talk to you more about this. But there are some specific phobias that kids can develop, specific fears. I would be curious to see if there's any trauma related to loud noises, because that would be something that would be addressed specifically in that regard. So we can talk about this more privately, but there are ways that you can, treat specific anxieties, specific phobias, and specific issues like this. So that is something I could definitely talk to you more about in depth after we are done. But this would probably kind of require some desensitization in the process, like some deep breathing, maybe taking her slowly to the dryer and showing that it's not something that is really scary. You would do this gently with her, maybe holding her hand or hugging her and giving her some security. Usually this is done with an expert present that would be able to, talk them slowly through what is causing the fear of the dryer, and then slowly kind of helping them to regulate and through deep breathing and all of these things, but at the same time slowly desensitizing them to the loud noise or to the dryer. But I can talk to you more about that after we are done. How can I encourage my daughter to stick up for herself when people are mean and insulting? She says it's fine and she doesn't care. So I believe that it would be rare for for somebody to say, I don't care. When people are saying mean things to you, again, refer to your strengths, refer to what you are good at, refer to what you have a purpose in, and that should help build her self-esteem and help build her self-confidence. If this continues and it becomes a problem, it is important for the parent to talk to teachers or to a priest or wherever this bullying is happening so that it can be stopped from the top down, okay? And yes, she should stick up for herself. Sometimes even ignoring this person helps, but nobody should ever insult you and just get away with it, all right? So either stand up for yourself, tell a teacher, tell a school, administrator of some sort, let them help you to kind of deal with this problem. Don't deal with it by yourself. Yes?
Question. When we talk to the children, sometimes they have some rejection accepting our advice or talking to them. They say, nowadays talk with us in the school. How we conquer that objection and make it more friendly to them to talk. Sometimes they don't want to talk to us, but they're willing to talk to other people.
First of all, I would say don't be offended if they want to talk to another person, as long as they are talking to an administrator or something about this bullying so that they don't feel alone and isolated. Sometimes they feel the advice is not relevant to what their actual experience is. So it's important to try to understand their experience and come from a place of empathy first. But if they think that the parent is not going to understand because you're not in the school with them, then say, at least try to explain it to me from your perspective so I can be empathetic so that I can understand your perspective. And sometimes it is okay, depending on how old they are, for them to try at least first to handle it on their own. So if it's a conflict resolution thing between two peers, it's okay to try to handle it on your own. If it gets out of hand, absolutely mom and dad need to get involved. If it's consistent, if their property is being destroyed, if they're being hit, if they come home from school with a black eye, absolutely get involved, all right? But sometimes it's okay to let them to try to work it out on their own first and keep following up. It's important to keep following up because parents, okay, they said it's okay, I'm just going to let it go. Come back in a day or two and say, how did this situation work out? Did it work out? If it didn't, all right, what can I do to help? How can I help you? And let them tell you what they need. Okay? Yeah.
Can you just remind us again of the name of the book that you referred to?
I'm sorry?
The book that we were referring to?
Oh, yeah, the Peter Benson book. It's What Teens Need to Survive, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Peter Benson is the author.
Yeah, everybody talks about their kids being targeted and like being the victims, but nobody talks about what they make the bully being a bully.
Yes,
like
good
how
question.
he does this, like how we can make him do not being bully for the other kids.
Absolutely. So that's why I was saying we need to build some tolerance and a lack of judgment between kids and building that empathy and teaching them to be empathetic towards other people so they don't become bullies. The research tells us that bullies are usually because Sometimes internally they feel like their self-esteem is weak, and so externally they overcompensate by showing I'm this big persona and I'm going to attack everyone so people can respect me. Sometimes they are bullied themselves, sometimes they're bullied at home, and that's the model. Somebody's talking to them and demeaning them at home, and so they're coming out and being a bully towards somebody else because that's the model that they have, and they want to feel powerful if they're not powerful at home. So then they'll demean other people somewhere else. So we need to have established a culture of empathy in all our situations, in church, in schools, and also we want to look at make sure that it's not something like a developmental issue or something behavioral that is happening with that kid as well. So again, we're looking biopsychosocial, spiritual, in terms of identifying why this kid is doing these things.
Question?
I just have a question. Like, if my kids got bullied, what about if they bully them back? Will that let them defend themselves in a good way?
Yeah, so there's again a difference between aggressive and assertive. We want to always aim for assertive, which is firm and respectful. So you're not going to take this lying down and everything is okay and become a doormat, but you want to become assertive, which means I am firm, but I am respectful. I can tell an adult to help me, but I'm not going to hit or destroy property or put somebody down verbally back. That's not the way to deal with it. The way to deal with it is assertively, not aggressively.
So if your kid get bullied and their action is like, I just ignore them and I don't care, like in so many situations, this is a normal reaction, or is there like they're being weak, or?
No, sometimes the I don't care is a way to like defend themselves, and it's like a defense mechanism. To protect myself from being hurt, I'm going to say I don't care, but I'm actually hurt. So it's important to still talk about the feelings and say, if somebody said that to me, I would definitely be hurt, even though I'm an adult. And nobody should talk to you that way. Nobody should disrespect you in this way. So it's okay for us to take action. Now, again, if it's somebody just saying something, they were having a bad day and they said something wrong, yes, they should apologize, but that's not necessarily bullying. Bullying is intentional, repeated, and again, there's a power difference in some way between the two people. So if it is repeated, it absolutely has to be taken care of, because this can't be something that is going on continually. It is still a form of verbal bullying, right? So if somebody, and it's like verbal abuse, right? We wouldn't tolerate verbal abuse. It's the same thing. So you should do something about it if it's repeated. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Sometimes we say, don't poke the bear. What I mean is,
I get it.
I can see my child is being bullied, but every time I try to go down to his level, understand his point of view, and he doesn't allow me to interfere with what's going on in his mind. How can I protect him
Yes.
with for what I can do, not to go to the next level? In some cases, we see kids, they commit suicide because the parents, they couldn't poke the bear and take out what's going on inside them and put it on the table and talk about it.
Yeah. And most kids are afraid to speak up. That's a really, really, really important question. Really good question. All of them are good questions, but this one really stood out. I think it's important to know that people don't want to poke the bear because they don't know how to handle the mess that will come out on the other side. Okay, so they don't tell someone when someone is hurting them. If I stay quiet, maybe it'll fix itself. Maybe I can protect this person from being hurt too. So there's all these reasons that people don't speak up, or they are afraid maybe they won't even have support if they speak up. So they don't speak up. But in my experience, situations that are not dealt with only grow. They will fester, they will grow, it will get worse. Okay? It is important to poke the bear, but to do so wisely and strategically. So maybe read up on the policies at the school, or speak to someone anonymously at the school about how to handle this. Again, you're not alone. You're individually, you are one drop, but we are together an ocean. Okay? So we have to poke the bear, but not carelessly, not going into the school and start screaming at everybody. That's not the strategic way to do it. It has to be done wisely, and it has to be done with reinforcement, maybe from the school or the school board or something like this. In fact, like I said, bullying is usually every school has an anti-bullying policy, and in most places it's also illegal. So you have the reinforcement of the law behind you, but it has to be done carefully and wisely.
Is that could happen between siblings being bullied?
A good what, I'm sorry?
Siblings.
Siblings?
Brother and sister, two brothers, two sisters, they can be bully each other's?
Unfortunately, sometimes that does happen. And so, again, sometimes siblings fight, and it's good to learn conflict resolution. So unless they're being supremely mean to each other, let them work it out to figure out their own solutions, all right? But if they're starting to get to the mean border, you have to step in and say, this is unacceptable. This is not how we talk to each other. There's a way to resolve conflict without being mean or picking on somebody's specific weakness. I've seen siblings do that. They know that the sibling has a weakness, and they will pick on that weakness. And that is definitely bullying, and that definitely needs to be stopped, okay? Because this is not the way adults communicate. We should not communicate this way, and if we do, somebody should tell us to stop, right? So conflict resolution is good, to learn how to work out problems, but not picking on somebody's weaknesses and bullying them for it. Absolutely wrong. Okay? We have a written question here. How can you get a 15-year-old boy to detach from his mom and attach to his dad? Good question. In general, kids by this age are detaching slowly from parents in an effort to start building their own relationships. There's a whole set of research on this. And it's normal that kids start to detach from their parents and connect more to peers, because eventually, in a few years, they'll start thinking about partners and creating their own families and things like that. So it is a normal process to detach from parents and attach to peers. That's normal and healthy and can be done correctly. If they're attached to one parent more than the other, let's identify why. Is one parent more empathetic than the other, more understanding, more providing of emotions and support and all those things? Just because the child is detaching from the parents and attaching to the peers does not mean they completely leave their parents. There's still always going to be a connection, even when they're adults, all right? And if it's done correctly, they will develop a friendship as they get older with their parents. Still a respectful, but a friendship. So develop that friendship from now. See what their interests are. Go with them to their interests. Do their interests with them. Build a rapport. Build a relationship. And from there, they will attach correctly while detaching and connecting to friends. Great questions. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Please.
Kids do mistakes, consequences follow, okay? No screen time this weekend. Come the weekend, you get busy with something, they turn it on, and you forget, they forget, and there goes the consequences. Sometimes I feel bad that I did rush a decision of cutting it out. Like, let's say I say, okay, you're not gonna have it for 2 weeks. I hold on to my decision Friday and Saturday. Come Sunday, you know what? Let's give them some time. How do you handle these regrets?
Yeah, in the heated moment of being upset about something, you're going to give the giant consequence, right? But think of what a judge does in a courtroom, right? They study the facts and they study the law and they say, this is the consequence that will fit this crime. okay? They're not going to go overboard and then go back and go back on their word, because their word is solid. This is a judge, all right? You are a judge in your home, all right? So you have to be calm and discerning and make a good decision about what the consequence is, all right? It's better to enforce a shorter consequence and truly enforce it than make a massive consequence and then go back on your word, okay? Because you have to be consistent. You have to be the judge in your own home. And consequences are okay. There are consequences in life too, right? Some of those consequences are natural consequences. You speed, you're going to get a ticket, like it or not. That's just the natural consequence, right? So be discerning and give yourself a minute. You could even say, I don't like your behavior right now. I need to think about what the consequence is going to be. Think about it calmly, and then enforce that consequence. So that way you don't go back on your word.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Please raise your hand.
So for Sunday school, when some kids are distracting the class, should we take them out, or what we should do as a servants?
Yeah, this is a big question, and I've done entire talks just on this topic to understand why kids are disruptive. Sometimes those kids need their own attention. They're looking for their attention in some way. And so if we can make them have some sort of responsibility in the class, that will give them the healthy attention without paying attention to their negative behavior. So sometimes, again, it's biopsychosocial, right? So we don't know exactly why they're misbehaving. It could be developmental issues, behavioral issues. It could be something socially that is going on. Maybe they're acting out to get attention from their peers and they want their peers' attention. So let's focus on all the reasons why it is happening, but then also give them some responsibility or some purpose in class to prevent them from seeking attention in a negative or a wrong way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. There's an entire talk just in that one question.
So should we end? Okay.
Thank you all so much.
We want to thank you so much for coming. Thank Dr. Christine Aghabi, and thank all the parents. Thank Abuna Makari, of course, first. And thank you for coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank Dr. Christine
Reach out if you need
Aghabi.
anything else.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Happy to help anytime.
Thank you. Really nice. Thank you so much.
I'm happy to help anytime. Just let me know.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Anytime. Thank you.
Do you have the speeches recorded?
I do. I'm actually in the process of redoing my website. I have about maybe 75 lectures recorded, and I have. Yeah.
Pray together?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
You are Dr. Manal?
I'm sorry.
اسمها حضرتك؟
Christine.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me, can we pray before we leave?
Through the intercessions of the Theotokos and Mary, grant us the forgiveness of our sins. We worship you, O Christ, with your good Father and the Holy Spirit, for you have come and saved us. The mercy of peace, a sacrifice of praise. We thank you, O Lord, for letting us gather today in front of your altar under you. Thank you for all the lessons that we're learning. Thank you for the love that you're helping us spread out. Thank you for all the opportunities that we get. Thank you for our church. Thank you for the health that we have. Please, God, light our way for us Light the path for us. Protect our children. Help us protect them. And guide us throughout the way. Through the intercession of Saint Mary, Prince Tadros, and all your saints, hear us when we pray thankfully. Our Father, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not in temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Christ Jesus our Lord, for thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory, forever and ever. In the name of the Father, and Son, and the Holy Spirit.